Chapter 12:18. No one had ever seen an ancient demon god alive. Of course, no one had ever seen a dead one either. The body of the demon god in the tomb had long become one with the blessed enclave through the passage of time. It had become a mountain of gold and iron. The thing that supported the blessed enclave must be the most important thing in the demon god's body. It was either the head or the heart. After knowing the location of the demon god's hands, Chu Xiu could more or less guess where the head and heart were. He did not stop and immediately brought Lu Jianghe over. Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe deduced the location of the demon god's head and heart. What they did not know was that with the speed and spiritual sense of a martial immortal, someone had already found the location. It was a small hill that was shaped like a huge head. However, it had 3 eyes. 2 of the normal eyes had been eroded into 2 large holes. However, the vertical eye in the middle was like a gem. It gave off a blinding light and one could tell it was not an ordinary object. There were 2 people standing in front of the vertical eye. One of them was a sloppy old man. He was the sect leader of the sect of Kiliakosm, Tao Qianming. The other person had a long sword on his back and an indifferent expression. He was one of the 3 great sword honorables of the world sword sect, Honorable Swordsman Qingli, Mu Baishuang. The 2 of them stood in front of the vertical eye. However, neither of them made a move. Tao Qianming did not show any hostility. This was because Tao Qianming knew that the difference between him and Mu Baishuang was too great. One was at the 4th heaven while the other was at the 7th heaven. Moreover, the crazy swordsman of the world sword sect had shocking battle strength. He was famous for being strong among his peers. The sect of Kiliakosm had many secret skills. He was known as the sect of Kiliakosm. Although he did not have 10,000 secret skills, he had quite a lot. However, a secret technique was a secret technique. There were only a few moves that were really useful. It was not always better to have more moves. Chen Qingdi only relied on his pair of iron fists to conquer the world, and it was still difficult for him to meet an opponent of the same level. The great Kiliakosm sect's special skills were formations, equipment forging, elixir concocting, and even research on all kinds of strange things. In terms of battle prowess, they were not stronger than warriors at the same level. Tao Qianming cupped his hands towards Mu Baishuang and said, "Sword Venerable Qingli, this object was formed from an ancient demonic god's vertical eye. It's where its power converges, so it must be extremely precious. How about this? The Kiliakosm sect is willing to forge 3 supreme-grade divine weapons for the sword sects under the heavens. We will provide the materials ourselves and request that the sword sects under the heavens provide them. I wonder if revered swordsman Qingli is willing to let me have it." Even though this item was a treasure, almost all of the warriors in the world sword sect relied on a single sword to conquer the world. To them, this item wasn't too useful. On the other hand, 3 supreme-grade divine swords were real. He was bleeding a lot, so he believed that Mu Baishuang would agree. However, Mu Baishuang didn't answer Tao Qianming. He only said indifferently, "Sect leader Tao, have you seen the current strength of the East region?" Tao Qianming was stunned. Why did he bring up the East region again? He nodded subconsciously and said, "I have." "What's wrong?" Mu Baishuang said in a deep voice, "Back when I came to the Daoist continent, the southern region was the weakest among the 4 regions. Now, in the southern region, the sword sect, the devil path, the battle god sect, the body cultivators, and the sect of miscellany represented by the great Kiliakosm sect. None of them are weak. On the other hand, the East region is filled with endless internal strife and the rise of Cold River City. The division of the 4 regions was established 10,000 years ago. Now that it's been 10,000 years, shouldn't the rules be changed?" Tao Qianming was shocked when he heard this. The guys from the sword sect of the world were not just cultivators who specialized in sword Dao. On the contrary, they were crazy and radical. It was said that before the great ancient calamity, the guys from the sword sect of the world had cold-bloodedly killed their own disciples and only left the elites to enter the Daoist continent. Although this behavior was rational, it was also rational and cold-blooded. Over the years, the sword sect of the world had vaguely become the #1 sect in the southern region. They had relied on the long swords in their hands to fight for their power. However, the Great Kiliakosm sect had actually risen after they came to the Daoist continent. It was not an ancient sect. Therefore, Tao Qianming didn't know much about the division of interests from 10,000 years ago. He just asked cautiously, "What does sword Venerable Qingli mean?" Mu Baishuang's face was still expressionless, but his voice had a trace of unmeltable coldness. "I mean, with this demon god's vertical eye as a guide, take advantage of this opportunity to severely injure, or even kill, the #1 person in the eastern region, High Heaven Sect's Fang Yinglong." Tao Qianming was shocked by Mu Baishuang's words. He couldn't help but whisper, "What do you want to do? Provoke a conflict between the two regions?" That's Fang Yinglong, the sect master of High Heaven Sect. Although they were enemies right now, seizing treasures was seizing treasures, and killing people was killing people. These were two different concepts. Mu Baishuang remained expressionless as he said, "A conflict between the two regions? No, it's only a conflict when both sides are evenly matched. Now that the southern territory is stronger than the eastern territory, it should be a matter of plunder. Also, Sect Master Tao, don't forget that the Daoist Divine Palace is about to open. That is truly related to the future of our great sections. The Exalted Divine Palace could only accommodate so many people. In the beginning, the Exalted Divine Palace had to draw lots in order to enter. Later on, they had to compete in the arena, but the last few times, it had become a complete melee. Although this melee is controlled within a certain range, no one knows how long this fragile order can be maintained. Killing now is killing in the future is still killing. Why can't we weaken the Eastern Territory now? It's been 10,000 years. The Daoist has been peaceful for too long. It's not that my sword sect wants to set off a storm, but that the entire Daoist, the 4 regions of the East, West, South, and North, have long been shrouded in endless storms. Hearing Mu Baishuang say this, Tao Qianming couldn't help twisting his body uncomfortably. He was also a martial immortal and the sect master of a top sect, so he could naturally feel this. 10,000 years was too long. It was already not easy for the order established 10,000 years ago to persist until now. In fact, 10,000 years ago, when everyone first came to the Daoist, they were all scattered across the 4 regions, each dealing with their own affairs. They were so busy with their own affairs that they couldn't deal with, so how could they have the time to care about others? Therefore, at that time, there was very little communication between the great Daoist sections. But now, although there were very few people who led a sect to traverse the 4 regions, there were many martial artists who traveled the entire Daoist to train. There were also forces like the Kiliakosm sect and Cold River City rising up. The order of the entire Daoist was actually different from 10,000 years ago. But Tao Qianming didn't expect that this would actually happen to him. After thinking for a while, Tao Qianming sighed and said, "What does Honorable Swordsman Qingli plan to do?" He was from the Southern Territory. This was a conflict between the 4 regions. If he didn't stand on the Southern Territory side, where would he stand? Mu Baishuang said indifferently, "It's very simple. There's no need to scheme, and I'm not good at that. When someone comes, I'll kill them with a sword. Sect Master Tao, you'll just be in charge of killing them for me." Tao Qianming grinned. Simple and violent indeed, that was the style of the sword sect. But what Tao Qianming didn't expect was that Mu Baishuang was even more simple and violent than he had imagined. He originally wanted to lie in ambush with Mu Baishuang and prepare to launch a sneak attack. But in the end, Mu Baishuang just stood there openly and didn't try to snatch the vertical eye. It was as if he was just waiting for Fang Yinglong to come. As a swordsman, Mu Baishuang's ambition was to obtain benefits directly, and not to obtain them indirectly. Of course, this required great strength. Otherwise, there would be no way to explain yourself if you were tricked to death. When Fang Yinglong arrived here, he saw this strange scene. The vertical eye that didn't look ordinary was floating in mid-air, while Mu Baishuang and Tao Qianming stood at the side. They didn't try to snatch it, and it was as if they were waiting for something. Fang Yinglong said in surprise. What kind of powerful protective formation is this place? Mu Baishuang looked at Fang Yinglong and said indifferently, Sect Master Fang, do you want this thing? Of course I do, Fang Yinglong answered subconsciously. Mu Baishuang nodded and said, very good, I want this thing too. As Mu Baishuang's voice fell, he unsheathed a long sword that was glowing with green light. Instantly, the sound of the sword resonated through the world. The green sword light distorted the world, and the laws of creation seemed to lose their effect under the sword light. There was only one type of power that could exist here, sword chi. Green Dawn Sword Realm. Fang Yinglong was shocked. This thing looked like a domain, but it wasn't. It was one of Mu Baishuang's famous techniques. But he was using it right from the start. What was he trying to do? Fang Yinglong didn't have time to think. The 9 dragons around him roared, trying to push open the Green Dawn Sword Realm. At this moment, Tao Qianming formed a seal with both hands and set up an array in the air. A blinding golden array light blocked Fang Yinglong's connection with the world. From the movements of the two of them, Fang Yinglong could feel that they were actually trying to kill him. Mu Baishuang. Are you people from the southern region crazy? You're trying to steal my treasure? Are you serious? Mu Baishuang didn't speak, but the Green Dawn Sword Realm opened up a world. Countless sword lights fell from the sky, strangling the coiling dragons around Fang Yinglong. Although Fang Yinglong didn't know why the two of them were trying to kill him, he naturally wouldn't just stand there and wait to be captured. A series of fierce exchanges instantly resounded through the entire blessed enclave. When Chu Xiu arrived, what he saw was a scene of a chaotic battle. It wasn't just Fang Yinglong and the other two. Linghu Immortal Mountain from the High Heaven sect had also come, and Zhong Chushui had also joined in. The martial god sect Sikong Jialua had also arrived from the southern region. They were engaged in a chaotic battle. With so many martial immortal level experts fighting, it was as if they were going to shatter the entire blessed paradise. The might of their battle was extremely terrifying. Lu Jianghu looked dumbfounded. What the hell? Why are these people from the Exalted Major so hot-tempered? Why do they look like they're robbing each other's wives? Why are they going all out? Chapter 12-19. When experts in the martial immortal realm fought, the power was so strong that even Chu Xiu did not dare to approach. However, after watching for a while, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Let's go, the core of the blessed enclave is not here." Lu Jiang pointed at the vertical eye in surprise and said, "This thing is so obvious, but it's not the core?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The core is an existence capable of supporting an entire world. Although this thing is very conspicuous and its power is not weak, it itself is too weak. It might even be possible that the shockwaves from the battle between the martial immortals might shatter it." With that, Chu Xiu led Lu Jiang to the place where the heart of the demon deity's body was. The place where the heart of the demon deity's body was located did not turn into a treasure as obvious as the vertical eye. There was only a small hill in this place. From the depths of the hill, there was a faint but powerful chi and blood power, and even a rhythmic beating sound could be heard. Almost all the warriors who entered the blessed enclave, except for those in the martial immortal realm, had gathered here to fight for this place. Of course, it was mainly between the southern region and the eastern region. In terms of numbers, the eastern region had too few warriors and was at a disadvantage. Although there were several profound enlightenment realm elders from the High Heaven sect, they were still led by Xianyuan Wushuang. Although he was seriously injured by Lu Fengxian in the martial arts gamble, his physical cultivation was not weak. He had already recovered and his strength had improved. At this moment, he was holding halberd to resist the warriors of the southern region while scolding Lu Sanjin and the other warriors of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. "Trash. Don't you know how to defend the flank? Since Zhong Choshui is not here, the Imperial Sky Pavilion only has a group of mobs like you?" Lu Sanjin's face showed a touch of anger. "Xianyuan Wushuang, who do you think you are to command the Imperial Sky Pavilion? You have been defeated by Brother Chu and Brother Lu. What, are you not satisfied? Do you want to fight me again?" Seeing that the people of the eastern region were starting to fight amongst themselves, the warriors of the southern region all revealed mocking expressions. Although the place where the blessed paradise appeared was relatively close to the eastern region, it still belonged to the southern region in the end. However, at this moment, an even more powerful aura descended. Chu Xiu's demonic aura floated and lingered in the air. His aura soared into the sky, stirring up the surrounding primordial qi and blood fog. It was incomparably dazzling. Lu Sanjin looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He rarely saw Chu Xiu make such a high-profile appearance. Scanning the crowd, Chu Xiu said faintly, "You're all early. But I'm sorry, I'll be taking this." Before he made his appearance, Chu Xiu had already unleashed the heaven's sun gazing at air skill's spiritual perception to the extreme. He could almost instantly see that what was being nurtured in the small mountain was the heart of the ancient demon god. Moreover, the strangest thing was that the outside of the heart was already petrified, but the center of the heart had condensed into a crystal. Moreover, there was even a faint life force emanating from it, connecting it with this world. This was the source of the blood fog in the blessed paradise. This was the core area of the entire blessed paradise. If it was destroyed, the entire blessed paradise would be destroyed as well. Due to this reason, it did not matter whether Chu Xiu kept a high profile or not. Strictly speaking, these people present here were his enemies. A heaven and earth profound enlightenment warrior of the Bliss Demon Palace was not one of Ming Xuanyu's subordinates. Instead, he had come with Yan Beifeng. He had never seen Chu Xiu fight before. When he heard this, he could not help but sneer and say, "You Eastern region warriors are weak, but you talk big. Do you really think that this is still the same as it was 10,000 years ago?" Among the southern region warriors present was the warrior from the Battle God sect who had seen Chu Xiu fight before. He said in a low voice, "Brother Fang, don't underestimate Chu Xiu. I've seen him fight before, and he easily defeated your Bliss Demon Palace." F***ck. Before the warrior from the Battle God sect could finish his sentence, Chu Xiu had already unsheathed the formation-breaking sword in his hand. The powerful edge of the sword was hidden within the blade, and he suddenly slashed at the ground. The entire ground shook as if an earth dragon was flipping over. In the next moment, boundless saber radiance had already risen from beneath the warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace. It also conveniently forced the warrior from the Battle God sect to swallow his words, causing him to dodge subconsciously. The blissful Devil Palace's cultivator was overwhelmed with shock. He quickly formed a series of hand seals, and dense devil chi circulated around his body, turning into a domain. Within the devil chi domain, the devil chi turned into evil spirits that howled and curled around his body. It was obvious that this warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace had just entered the heaven and earth profound enlightenment realm. Chu Xiu had immediately used his domain because it was sufficiently powerful. The name, Deity Domain, wasn't an exaggeration. It was a supreme domain that had evolved from the integration of all his martial arts. However, this warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace had used his domain purely out of reflex. He had used his strongest technique. The evil spirits transformed from the demon chi in the domain devoured the power of the saber radiance. The cultivation method of the Bliss Demon Palace was quite impressive. It was actually able to devour the saber radiance completely before it reached its body. However, before the warrior could heave a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of him. Chu Xiu's deity domain spread out and enveloped the warrior's domain. In an instant, yin and yang were reversed, and the 5 elements were reversed. Even all the laws of heaven and earth were strangled within the deity domain. In less than a breath's time, his domain had been completely destroyed. The blissful demon palace's cultivator was overwhelmed with shock. His figure moved, and a blood mist condensed around him. It actually took the form of a blood dragon. It struggled and circled around him, stirring the laws of energy in an attempt to escape from Chu Xiu's deity domain. However, before he could do anything, a huge Buddhist seal appeared in front of him. The light of Vairocana burst forth, and holy Buddhist light floated in the blessed land filled with blood mist. However, it gave off an extremely sacred feeling, and there was even a faint sound of Buddhist chanting ringing out in everyone's hearts. The blissful Devil Palace's cultivator was about to go crazy. When Chu Xiu first appeared, he was clearly covered in a fierce devil qi, and his attacks were extremely ruthless. He did not hold back at all. Why did he use a Buddhist cultivation method now? The demon used Buddhist techniques and in the end, it was so strong. That was incomprehensible. The Vairocana seal smashed down, and a blood mist erupted around the Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator. The blood dragon was directly smashed into pieces, and the Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator vomited a mouthful of blood as he fell to the side. What are you waiting for? Are you just going to watch this guy flaunt his power in front of the southern region's cultivators? The Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator shouted loudly as he vomited blood. This was a dispute between two regions. The others were stunned by Chu Xiu's earlier display of strength. Now that they saw Chu Xiu's arrogance, they snorted coldly and rushed forward. This time, Lu Sanjin did not say anything. He immediately led his men and protected Chu Xiu from the side with Lu Jianghu. However, Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Brother Lu, this thing is very useful for my current cultivation base. Can you let me have it?" Lu Sanjin was stunned for a moment, but he immediately said, "Of course, no problem." Chu Xiu was a member of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Most importantly, Chu Xiu's strength was clear for all to see. Since he had spoken, Lu Sanjin would consider it, even if it was just for show. Moreover, Lu Sanjin still thought that he owed Chu Xiu a favor. A heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivator from the sword sect stood in front of Chu Xiu. The sword qi in his hand was like frost, and the piercingly cold sword gleam seemed to tear the world apart. Above Chu Xiu, a cultivator from the Kiliakosm sect set up a formation empty-handed. In the blink of an eye, a 5 elements formation was set up. It followed closely behind the sword qi of the sword sect's cultivator and surrounded Chu Xiu. The blissful demon palace was powerful. They had 2 heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivators. One of them was severely injured, while the other sneered coldly. He took out a big flag and erected it on the ground. In an instant, a gust of wind blew, and demon qi roared. It condensed into a demon general holding a weapon and charged towards Chu Xiu. The cultivator from the Battle Gods sect was a little afraid of Chu Xiu because he had seen Chu Xiu fight before. At this moment, when he saw all the cultivators from the southern territory attacking, he clenched his teeth and followed Chu Xiu. At this moment, the 4 heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivators besieged Chu Xiu together. Even Lu Sanjin had a grave expression on his face. The heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivator from the high heaven sect wanted to help, but Xianyuan Wushuang waved his hand and stopped him. "Wushuang, this is a dispute between the eastern territory and the southern territory. We can't really watch the other party lose, can we? At that time, we will be targeted by the southern territory." Everyone in the high heaven sect knew about the grudge between Xianyuan Wushuang and Chu Xiu. He thought that Xianyuan Wushuang wanted to hit them when they were down. Xianyuan Wushuang said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Marshal Uncle Lin. I know what to do." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianyuan Wushuang shouted at Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu. If you want me to help you, I can. After this is done, my High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion will share the treasures in this place equally. Is that too much?" Although Xianyuan Wushuang was arrogant, he knew what to do. He was the future successor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. If he always acted on impulse, even though the High Heaven sect wouldn't give up on him, they would definitely reconsider whether it was appropriate for him to be the successor. After all, he wasn't the only one among the younger generation in the High Heaven sect who had hopes of becoming a martial immortal. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's not too much. However, I want to take all of these treasures. There is no such thing as an equal share." "Chu Xiu, you're courting death." Xianyuan Wushuang's eyes flashed with coldness. He said to the enlightening profound realm warrior of the High Heaven sect, "Marshal Uncle Lin, as you can see, Chu Xiu obviously doesn't want to cooperate with our High Heaven sect. We don't need to do anything. Let's wait for him to fight with the warriors of the Southern Territory and then wait for an opportunity to strike. Seeing that Chu Xiu had already started fighting with the warriors of the Southern Territory, Marshal Uncle Lin shook his head helplessly. These young people's view of the big picture was worse than the other. He could see that Xianyuan Wushuang still held a grudge against Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu still wanted to take all the treasures for himself at this time. It was simply unreasonable. Chapter 12:20. Lu Sanjin couldn't help feeling helpless as the 4 cultivators from the Southern Territory attacked. In his opinion, Brother Chu was a little too overconfident. At this time, if he had feigned civility with High Heaven's sect and let them take action, they would still have had the strength to fight. But now that High Heaven's sect was eyeing them covetously, they felt even more pressure. "Old Lu, help me block that guy from Blissful Demon Palace," Chu Xiu said in a deep voice. Putting aside the strength of the Blissful Demon Palace cultivators in a head-on fight, their endless and strange methods were very annoying. Just like when Chu Xiu fought with Ming Xuanyu previously, he could have easily defeated the other party, but he still let the other party escape. In the time it took to say a word, the sword of the cultivator from Sword Sect had already arrived in front of him. Breaking array slashed out with extreme sharpness. The ethereal slash was fused with the saber intent of the shattering character secret. The sharpness contained in this slash was enough to tear apart all the power of principles. When the two collided, an extreme sharpness suddenly erupted. Seal. At this time, the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect formed a seal with his hands. The moment Chu Xiu attacked, the spirit array began to tighten almost immediately. In fact, this group of cultivators from the Southern Territory had never worked together to fight an enemy before, and there were even some contradictions between the two sides. However, everyone here was a heaven and earth profound insight cultivator. Even the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect who mainly studied miscellaneous spirit arrays was a veteran of hundreds of battles. At this time, although their teamwork was not perfect, they were still able to accurately pinpoint each other's positions without any loopholes. Chu Xiu's God domain spread out, and in the misty domain, the 5 elements were thrown into disorder. Almost in an instant, the spirit array laid down by the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect began to collapse. The expression of the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect changed suddenly. What kind of strange domain was this? The power contained within it had even completely broken away from the world rules of this world. At this time, the cultivator from Martial God Sect followed up with a punch. The cultivators of the Battle Martial God Sect cultivated their bodies and were good at close combat. This warring Martial God Sect martial artist's mortal body cultivation was almost comparable to that of Chu Xiu, who had cultivated true fire to refine his body. His mortal body was even shimmering with layers of golden light. He wasn't afraid of the divine weapons, nor was he afraid of the power of Chu Xiu's God domain. As his fist smashed down, it was as if the world was turning upside down. In the next moment, the power around Chu Xiu's body suddenly started to shrink. All the forces in the surroundings, including the sword chi of the martial artist of the World Sword Sect, the power of the formation set up by the martial artist of the Great Thousand Sect, and the blood fog which was mixed with powerful terrifying blood chi, were all absorbed by Chu Xiu in an instant. His body began to expand in an instant. In an instant, he had become a demon god that was hundreds of feet tall. At the moment when the law embodiment of heaven and earth was displayed, Chu Xiu seemed to have formed some kind of mysterious connection with this blessed place. There was actually a trace of rhythm. The blood fog actually surged into Chu Xiu's body on its own accord, causing his body to expand by dozens of feet in an instant. However, Chu Xiu didn't have time to think. He punched out. The extreme power instantly brought about an even more powerful force, causing everything within a radius of hundreds of feet to be compressed into nothingness by this force. There was a loud explosion. At this moment, the cultivators of the World Sword Sect and Great Thousand Sect, even Lu Jianghu and the others, all retreated hurriedly. The cultivator from Martial God Sect who bore the brunt of the attack was extremely shocked. His heart was filled with regret. Among the people present, he had seen Chu Xiu in action before. He was also aware of Chu Xiu's strength. Therefore, he was extremely fearful of Chu Xiu. However, he didn't expect that even so, he had still underestimated Chu Xiu. Who could withstand the power of this punch? To use a divine skill in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth was simply bullying. With a furious roar, the cultivator from the martial god sect no longer cared about anything else. He gathered all the power in his body into his arm, and the power of his blood qi erupted with a loud bang, condensing into a demon god Dharma idol behind him. Its power was just as extraordinary. However, when the illusory embodiment collided with the physical embodiment of the law embodiment of heaven and earth, the embodiment instantly exploded under that punch. The battle armor of the cultivator from martial god sect didn't even last for a breath's time. There was a cracking sound, a glimmer of light, and it was completely shattered. His whole body began to disintegrate under this powerful force. From his arm to his arm, he directly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Under the law embodiment of heaven and earth, the cultivator from martial god sect was directly sent flying like a rag doll. His body was covered with blood marks, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The first one. Chu Xiu's expression didn't change at all. He looked at the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect who was floating in the air. There was no killing intent in his eyes, but it made the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect feel a chill from the bottom of his heart to the top of his head. So what if he was a half-step martial immortal? Ancestor Blood River also died in his hands. So what if he was at the peak of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth? Ming Xuanyu was also chased by him like a stray dog. Although Chu Xiu couldn't be like Qinqing Di, who could beat up cultivators at the same level as soon as he made a breakthrough, he wouldn't be too bad. He was Dugu Weiwei's earthly soul doppelganger. Now, he finally knew that he was a special existence. Later, he was taught martial arts by Tianhun. It could be said that in the whole Daoist Ocean, including the lower world, no one had such rich resources like him. In this state, if Chu Xiu still couldn't be arrogant among those at the same level, how could he fight with the life soul in netherworld heaven? He could just strip naked and wait for it to devour and fuse with him. Withdrawing the law embodiment of heaven and earth, Chu Xiu's body leaped into the air like a cannonball and directly slashed at the cultivator from Great Thousand Sect. The cultivator from Great Thousand Sect let out a strange cry. Light flashed in his hands, and he threw out several array discs. In an instant, they turned into a large array and shrouded Chu Xiu. And that wasn't all. The cultivator from Great Thousand Sect also threw out a bunch of mechanical puppets, as well as all kinds of traps and other things. In an instant, colorful lights swirled around them, and they all smashed toward Chu Xiu. The Great Front Sect was best at these kinds of messy things. But at this time, when they all smashed toward him, the power was extremely shocking. At the same time, the cultivator from the World Sword Sect looked cold. He didn't care that Chu Xiu had destroyed a mysterious heaven and earth realm expert with one punch. The sword could cut the sun and the moon, and an extreme sword qi gathered at the tip of his long sword. That was the purest sword qi, and it was also the most extreme sword qi. It didn't contain any attributes, but it could tear the void and cut everything. Among the swordsmen from the World Sword Sect, there weren't many who could condense such pure sword qi. Therefore, his sword arrived first. Before the sword qi arrived, the sword essence had already attacked. But in the next moment, his calm expression suddenly changed. Under his sword, Chu Xiu's body was like a ripple, swaying and breaking. Illusion. It's an illusion. He subconsciously shouted. Now you realize? It's too late. As soon as Chu Xiu's words left his mouth, his figure had unknowingly appeared behind the martial artist from the sword sect. Endless saber gleams shrouded him, as though they were tearing the sky and the earth apart. The powerful sword essence was enough to destroy everything. Perhaps it wasn't as pure as his sword essence, but it had an extreme sharpness and a violent intent of destruction. Under the attack of the endless saber gleams, the sky and the ground were filled with the extreme sharpness of the saber gleams. The cultivator from the World Sword Sect let out a furious roar. Blood and qi blossomed around his body. The blood and qi condensed into sword essence and attached to his body. His entire body was like a sharp blood sword that had been unsheathed. Sword transformation. However, at the next moment, Chu Xiu performed the law embodiment of heaven and earth again. But this time, he didn't transform his entire body into the body of a demon. Instead, he absorbed the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth crazily and condensed it into one of his arms. Instantly, it expanded to 100 zhang in size. With a loud slap, it was as though the sky was falling and the cultivator from the world sword sect was sent flying. The body of the sword shattered. Although the cultivator from the world sword sect didn't die, he was severely injured. He was only left with half a breath. The second one. Swinging his arm, Chu Xiu's right arm actually had traces of blood marks. This made him frown slightly. After performing the law embodiment of heaven and earth so many times, Chu Xiu could control this magical power freely. Therefore, he wanted to try using the law embodiment of heaven and earth as a part of his body. That way, he might consume less energy. After all, with Chu Xiu's current strength, he could only use the law embodiment of heaven and earth for 3 to 5 punches. This was already his limit. Any more and he would hurt his foundation. However, it was a good idea and he could indeed save a lot of energy. However, Chu Xiu's physical body couldn't take it anymore. The human body was a whole body. Gathering strength in one's entire body and gathering it in one's arm were two different concepts. Lifting his head to look at the cultivator from the Great Thousand Sect, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You are the third one." The cultivator from the Great Thousand Sect suddenly shivered. He picked up his messy arrayed discs and other things, turned around and fled. He was an elder in the Great Thousand Sect. In the entire southern region, he could be considered a famous big shot. However, he had never seen such a terrifying existence like Chu Xiu. When fighting with him, you simply couldn't relax for even a breath of time. If you made one wrong move, what awaited you was simply death or disability. Invincible in the same realm. Such a person was no longer someone he could fight. Whether it was the group of crazy swordsmen from the World Sword Sect or the group of muscular men from the War God Sect, they were all stronger than him. Now that they were all crippled, what was the point of fighting? Watching the cultivator from the Great Thousand Sect escape, Chu Xiu squinted his eyes. He bent his arm to the bow and displayed the 3 extinguishing city arrow. In an instant, 5 3 extinguishing city arrows exploded at the same time, shooting towards the cultivator from the Great Thousand Sect. Immediately, the other party screamed and fled even more frantically. 5 3 extinguishing city arrows couldn't kill an expert of the heaven and earth mysterious realm. However, the other party was already scared out of his wits. Therefore, Chu Xiu didn't want to chase after him. He was here to seize the core, not to kill. He wasn't bloodthirsty. However, when Chu Xiu turned his head to look at the cultivator from the blissful demon palace who was fighting with Lu Jianghu and Lu Sanjin, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of killing intent. Chapter 12:21. Although the blissful demon palace and Chu Xiu were both from the demonic Dao, Chu Xiu didn't identify with them. In his eyes, there were only 2 kinds of people. One was his own people, and the other was his enemies. There was no distinction between righteous and demonic. Moreover, many demonic Dao martial artists had died in his hands when he was in the lower realm. The hidden demon lineage had more of them than the bright demon lineage. Yan Beifeng's curiosity towards him rose to suspicion. Chu Xiu would have to deal with this trouble sooner or later. So now, this martial artist from the blissful demon palace had to die too. At this moment, he was being held back by Lu Jianghu, Lu Sanjin, and the other martial artists from the Imperial Sky Pavilion. He couldn't get away. Just now, Chu Xiu had destroyed 2 martial artists and forced one to flee. He had seen all of this with his own eyes. How could this be described with just the word terrifying? When he saw Chu Xiu's gaze that was filled with killing intent, he immediately shivered. He suddenly gritted his teeth, and the flag in his hand that was emitting demonic aura suddenly exploded. A wave of pure demonic aura fused into his body. At the same time, blood qi erupted around him, mixed with demonic qi. His speed was extremely fast, and he decisively used the blood escape secret technique to escape. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hand. In an instant, the heavenly tears blood rain descended. The powerful force instantly shrouded the martial artist. The demon god's giant hand tore apart the demonic qi and blood qi around him, and pulled him back. At the same time, Lu Jianghu grinned hideously. "Brat, you still want to escape after falling into my hands? You're thinking too much." As soon as he finished speaking, strands of blood qi around Lu Jianghu wrapped the martial artist from the blissful demon palace within, instantly turning him into a blood cocoon. However, before Lu Jianghu could do anything, an extremely sharp saber light slashed down and killed the martial artist from the blissful demon palace. Lu Jianghu was stunned. He looked at Chu Xiu in dissatisfaction. "You've gone too far. You stole my head again." Although he said so, Lu Jianghu didn't waste it. His blood qi strands frantically absorbed the martial artist's qi and blood qi. At this moment, everyone from the High Heaven sect was dumbfounded. They had never imagined that this group of southern region cultivators would not even last 15 minutes at Chu Xiu's hands before all of them died at his hands. Previously, Xianyuan Wuxuang had planned to make a move when both of them were injured. Now, it was clear that both of them were not injured, but crushed. Xianyuan Wuxuang clenched his fists, with disbelief and unwillingness in his eyes. He thought it was because he didn't perform well. If they really fought, the outcome would be unknown. Xianyuan Wuxuang would have died. He felt that it was because he did not perform well enough. If they really fought, the outcome of the battle was still unknown. However, when he saw Chu Xiu make a move today, he finally gave up. He truly gave up. With the combat power that Chu Xiu had displayed, he wouldn't be able to catch up to him even if he risked his life. It was especially so for that lawful embodiment of heaven and earth punch. There was no way he could block it. But Xianyuan Wuxuang was unwilling. He gritted his teeth and said to Junior Uncle Lin, "Junior Uncle Lin, attack." Junior Master Lin frowned. "Wuxuang, don't mess around. Do you want to die by attacking at this time? I told you to attack." Xianyuan Wuxuang growled. Junior Uncle Lin glanced at Xianyuan Wuxuang and snorted. "Xianyuan Wuxuang. Don't forget that you're not the sect master of the High Heaven sect yet. Do you think you're qualified to be the sect master of the High Heaven sect?" Xianyuan Wuxuang's face turned red, but he didn't say a word in the end. For a top sect like the High Heaven sect, there would definitely be more than one successor. But he was the most outstanding one among the successors. Junior Uncle Lin was a profound enlightenment realm expert and a deacon elder of the High Heaven sect. If he gave you face, he would listen to you. If he didn't, what could you do? At this time, Chu Xiu walked up to the warrior from the Bliss Palace who was seriously injured by his Virokana seal. Nearly half of the bones in the warrior's body were shattered by Chu Xiu's Virokana seal, and his body was invaded by the Buddha light. He had lost his combat strength. Seeing Chu Xiu walking over slowly, he knew what Chu Xiu wanted to do, even though Chu Xiu didn't have much killing intent. That warrior was also a palace master of a branch of the Bliss Palace. Although he wasn't as strong as Ming Xuanyu, he was still a powerful figure. Although he was afraid, he didn't beg for mercy. He just said coldly, "Chu Xiu, do you really want to kill me? The price of fighting my Bliss Demon Palace to the death is something you can't afford. Moreover, you're a descendant of Guzun, so you need to save face. Aren't you afraid of losing face by attacking someone who has no combat strength like me? Aren't you afraid of being accused of disrespecting justice?" Chu Xiu shook his head gently and said, "Kill me? I've already killed a profound enlightenment realm cultivator from your Bliss Demon Palace. So what if I kill another one? In any case, killing one is killing, and killing two is also killing. Moreover, your Bliss Demon Palace is ruthless and cruel. You killed innocent people in the Southern Territory, slaughtered the barbarians, and did all kinds of heartless things. There's no need to talk about justice with a devil like you. Go to hell." As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, the Bliss Demon Palace cultivator was beheaded by Chu Xiu's saber before he could even react. Lu Jianghu, who was at the back, wore a strange expression. Why did Chu Xiu's words sound so familiar to him? It seemed to be what the cultivators of the righteous path from the lower realm used to curse him. After beheading the cultivator from Blissful Demon Palace, Chu Xiu turned his eyes to the people from High Heaven sect and spat out a single word, scram. Xianyuan Wushuang immediately exploded when he heard this word, but before he could say anything, Martial Uncle Lin dragged him away without saying a word. High Heaven sect might be the #1 sect in the Eastern Territory, but his life was his own. Chu Xiu was at his peak, and killing Profound Enlightenment Realm cultivators was as easy as killing chickens. Getting lost at this time was at least better than dying. After everyone was gone, Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber. The saber light tore the hill apart and brought out the crystal. It was a blood-red natural crystal that looked like a heart. Chu Xiu held it in his hand and could clearly feel that there was something pulsating within it. It was a very rhythmic movement. Moreover, after Chu Xiu obtained this item, he immediately sensed that the blessed enclave trembled. Therefore, Chu Xiu was certain that this was the core of the blessed enclave, as well as the thing that supported it. After putting it into the space box, Chu Xiu didn't destroy it immediately. This thing was the core, but it was also a treasure. Of course, he had to find a safe place to study it before destroying it. Lu Sanjin came over and shook his head, saying, "Brother Chu, I find that every time I see you fight, I feel a sense of defeat. Why do I feel that even though you haven't been in seclusion for as long as me, your strength has improved so quickly?" Chu Xiu patted his shoulder and said, "This kind of thing depends on talent. It's useless for you to force it. But don't worry, you'll get used to it after a few more times." Lu Sanjin, although that was the case, why did he feel that something was wrong? "By the way, Brother Chu, did you see the pavilion master and the others when you came over? Even from here, I am able to sense the powerful energy ripples from the battle between martial immortal level experts. Could it be that some sort of treasure has appeared there?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I saw them. They're fighting over a vertical eye left behind by an ancient demon god. The blessed paradise itself was formed from the body of an ancient demon god. That ancient demon god possessed 3 eyes. As for the middle eye, it most definitely contained enormous power. Thus, it attracted many martial immortal level experts to fight over it. The Pavilion Master and Feng Yinglong of the High Heaven sect, as well as Linghu Immortal Mountain, are currently fighting fiercely with the cultivators of the southern region. However, those cultivators of the southern region are really ruthless. That person from the World Sword sect's every move is aimed at taking lives. It's as if they're fighting to the death." After hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lu Sanjin felt that something was amiss. He suddenly raised his head and asked, "You said those people of the southern region are trying to kill them?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" Lu Sanjin's expression changed, and he said, "Oh no. Those people of the southern region might not be after the treasure, but they're plotting to heavily injure the cultivators of the eastern region. It is merely the opening of a blessed land. Unless the treasures contained within are capable of creating a level 9 martial immortal, they would not be something that martial immortal experts would risk their lives to fight over." Chu Xiu wasn't someone from the celestial absolute heaven. He didn't even have a clear understanding of the eastern region, let alone the southern region. So, when they saw so many people fighting over it and the people of the southern region trying to kill them, although Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang felt it was strange, they thought it was normal. Chu Xiu thought for a moment and said, "Are you going to help Feng Yinglong?" Although the Pavilion Master also participated in the battle over there, their main target is not the Pavilion Master, but Feng Yinglong, the #1 cultivator of the eastern region. Lu Sanjin said in a deep voice, "It's not to help Feng Yinglong, but to help ourselves." In fact, some hidden contradictions between the eastern and southern regions have long been surging. The old Pavilion Master told me about these things when he was still alive. Among the 4 regions, the eastern region is the weakest, while the southern region is the worst. As a result, the southern region will inevitably be unbalanced. Moreover, the sects of the southern region are extreme, the demonic path are extreme, the sword sect is paranoid, and the war god sect and the great thousand sect are not easy to deal with. Sooner or later, trouble will arise. Although the High Heaven sect and my Imperial Sky Pavilion have been fighting for so long, neither side has the intention to destroy the other, they just want to weaken it. But if it was those sects from the Southern Territory, then they would really annihilate them. So, my Imperial Sky Pavilion can't stand idly by. Chu Xiu nodded thoughtfully, not knowing what he was thinking, but he still followed Lu Sanjin to the place where the martial immortal masters were fighting. Chapter 1222. When Chu Xiu, Lu Sanjin, and the others arrived at the battlefield, they were stunned by the scene. Chu Xiu suddenly realized that he didn't have to spend so much effort to find the core of the Blessed Enclave. That was because the entire Blessed Enclave had almost been penetrated by the martial immortals. Apart from Yuan Kongqing of Heavenly Demon Palace, who knew what he was doing, there were a total of 7 martial immortals fighting here. It was as if doomsday had arrived. The Blessed Enclave itself was not a real world. It was just a small world formed by the corpse of an ancient demon god. Therefore, the rules here were incomplete and had loopholes and flaws. Under the frenzied attacks of these martial immortals, the small world was already full of cracks, and even the blood-red mist that covered the entire blessed paradise was expelled. There were fewer people on the Eastern Territory side, and for some reason, Fang Yinglong, the strongest expert in the Eastern Territory, seemed to have suffered some injuries during the previous surprise attack. He was suppressed by Mu Baishuang to the point where he couldn't even lift his head. Thanks to Linghu Immortal Mountain's amazing combat power, he was able to fight against 2 martial immortals and Yan Beifeng of the martial god sect alone. Although Zhong Qiushui could also suppress Tao Qianming, the outcome of the battle still depended on the 2 martial immortals at the 8th heavenly layer. In such a chaotic battle, even if Lu Sanjin came with his people, it would be useless. The other disciples of the High Heaven sect were also there, and they didn't even take action. They were all watching the outcome of the battle nervously. Fang Yinglong looked at Mu Baishuang and said through gritted teeth, "You sword sect of the world is so bold to want to provoke a war between the Southern Territory and the Eastern Territory. The Daoist people have lived in peace for 10,000 years, and now you want to break these rules. Aren't you afraid of causing public anger?" Mu Baishuang said lightly, "It's because this rule hasn't changed for 10,000 years that it needs to be changed now. Don't take the rules so seriously. In the 4 Daoist regions, who doesn't sweep the snow in front of their door? The northern region's Dao schools reign supreme, and given their personality, they wouldn't care about anything other than the exalted divine palace. In the western region, the Brahmin sect and the Heavenly Treasure Buddha have been fighting for 10,000 years, and they are still fighting. Do you think they have time to care about this kind of thing? The eastern region was vast and abundant in resources, while the southern region was narrow and cramped, with poor resources. It's such a good environment, but your eastern region doesn't cherish it. Now, it's time for someone else." The sword sect of the world had never tried to hide anything. This was what they thought and what they wanted to do. There was no grudge, only the future of the 2 territories and the future of the sect. Fang Yinglong shouted and 9 huge golden dragons condensed around his body. However, the 9 golden dragons had traces of blood markings on their bodies. The gathering of the 9 dragons was like a battle formation. As the dragon roars erupted, a huge crack appeared in the entire blessed enclave. "Linghu, prepare to retreat." Fang Yinglong roared at Linghu Immortal Mountain as he prepared to flee. He couldn't fight anymore. The other party had already made up his mind to kill. This was also a trap. If he died, the war between the eastern region and the southern region would erupt at any moment. "Retreat? You can't leave." Mu Baishuang's Green Dawn sword realm was withdrawn into his body. All the aura around him was condensed, and his long sword shone with a blinding light, as if the sun had descended. A shadow bloomed around Mu Baishuang. It was 80% similar to him, but it was completely formed from sword aura. That illusory figure stabbed out with his sword. Everything in the world was covered by this sword. The sky and earth were filled with sword chi. In an instant, Fang Yinglong's 9 dragons were shattered. The sword qi replaced the laws of the world and completely filled up the cracks that Fang Yinglong had created. One sword, seal the heavens. Sikong Jelua, attack with all your might. Yan Beifeng, use your Bliss Demon Palace's secret technique to kill. Mu Baishuang's voice rang in the minds of Sikong Jelua and Yan Beifeng as he sealed up the crack with his powerful sword aura. Although the martial artists of the southern region often had disputes, at this moment, even the unruly and crazy Yan Beifeng chose to listen to Mu Baishuang's command. Sikong Jelua's strength surged, and his qi and blood surged. In an instant, he transformed into a demon god that was hundreds of feet tall. He punched at Linghu Immortal Mountain. Sikong Jelua's technique was very similar to Chu Xiu's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, but they were not the same type of technique. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth absorbed the energy of heaven and earth around him to form the body of a demon god. However, Sikong Jelua's technique did not absorb energy. Instead, it exploded the power of his qi and blood to the extreme. It was also a mystique. These two mystiques had their own advantages and disadvantages. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was stronger, but the power absorbed was not something he could control. If he was not careful, it could easily backfire on him. Sikong Jelua's technique used the power of his qi and blood, so it was easier to control. However, its upper limit was not as strong as the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Taking advantage of Sikong Jelua's attack, Yan Beifeng instantly escaped. In the countless demon palaces behind him, the demon gods roared, but they all knelt on the ground in worship. In that instant, the sky collapsed, and the weather changed. Kowtow of 10,000 demons. Mystique. Mystique of the demonic path. All the energy in the world was converted into surging demonic aura, which dissipated in the next instant. No one was qualified to withstand the kowtow of 10,000 demons, unless it was the Supreme Demon Lord. Fang Yinglong naturally could not do it. At that instant, Fang Yinglong's expression changed. He was an 8th heavenly layer martial immortal, but the gathering of the 9 dragons and forcefully tearing apart the blessed land had exhausted all his energy. He did not expect Mu Baishuang to be able to seal the sky with sword aura and forcefully seal the crack. This was even more difficult than tearing apart the world. His remaining energy was not enough to withstand this attack. Even if he did not die, he would be heavily injured if he forced it. At this time, what was the difference between being heavily injured and being killed? Just as Fang Yinglong was at his wit's end and was about to unleash the last of his vital energy to forcefully resist, he suddenly discovered that someone had blocked his path. That person was actually Chu Xiu. Even Lu Sanjin was shocked by Chu Xiu's action. Although he had told Chu Xiu before that if Fang Yinglong died, the Imperial Sky Pavilion and even the entire eastern region would be in trouble, Chu Xiu had told Chu Xiu before that if Fang Yinglong died, the Imperial Sky Pavilion and even the entire eastern region would suffer. However, the scene before them was a battle between martial immortals. They could not interfere at all. Chu Xiu's action was simply courting death. It was not worth it. Only Lu Jianghe knew why Chu Xiu would make a move. Because Chu Xiu was also afraid that the teeth would be interdependent without the lips. However, his teeth were not the Imperial Sky Pavilion, but the stronghold he established in the southern barbaric land. Once the southern region began to attack the eastern region, the direction of the other party's attack would definitely be the southern barbaric land. At that time, could Chu Xiu's stronghold in the southern barbaric land still be preserved? Although Chu Xiu could choose to defect immediately and rely on the sex of the southern region, that was equivalent to handing over his wealth and future to others. This was the last thing Chu Xiu wanted to do. Since he did not want to do these things, the only thing he could do was to help Fang Yinglong get through this crisis. So far, among the martial cultivators that Chu Xiu had fought, the strongest were Xan Jialua and Ancestor Blood River. Both of them were half-step martial immortals and Ancestor Blood River was killed by him. However, the strongest expert in the martial immortal realm was Yan Beifeng, who had reached the 5th heaven of martial immortal realm. Even for Chu Xiu, it was extremely dangerous. So, the instant Chu Xiu attacked, he had already unleashed his greatest power. The power of the blood demon transformation technique was unleashed. Blood aura that soared into the sky suddenly erupted. Like a huge pillar of blood, it traversed the sky and pierced into the rules of power of the many experts. Old Lu! Chu Xiu suddenly shouted. Lu Jiang he understood what Chu Xiu meant. Although he was a bit unwilling, he still began to form hand seals at the fastest speed possible. He also used the blood demon transformation technique. As both of them knew the blood demon divine technique, their powers could naturally complement each other. After Lu Jiang he unleashed the blood demon transformation technique, a pillar of blood also shot out from his body. However, it connected with Chu Xiu's pillar of blood and poured its power into his body. The 10,000 demons kowtowed in worship. By the time the power arrived before him, Chu Xiu's body had already been completely dyed the color of blood by the blood demon transformation art. However, an extremely pure and magnificent Buddhist light appeared from the hand seals he formed. It was incomparably holy and dazzling. A cross-shaped lotus appeared in his hand. In an instant, Buddhist light blossomed and Sanskrit descended. Lotus great purification, cross great redemption. The appearance of the cross-shaped lotus collided with the 10,000 demons kowtowing. The Buddhist light and the demonic aura collided. The power of the two extremes surged in the air and exploded, transforming into a boundless storm. Sect leader Fang. Hurry up and leave. Chu Xiu turned around and shouted at Fang Yinglong. There were even some faint cracks on his body. He really couldn't hold on any longer. The power of Yan Beifeng's 10,000 demons kowtowing was stronger than he imagined. Even if he used the cross-shaped lotus that could restrain demonic arts, he still couldn't hold on for more than 3 breaths. At this time, Fang Yinglong had no time to think about why Chu Xiu would help him. A mist of blood burst out from his body. As he formed a seal with his hand, a soaring heaven pagoda that seemed to pierce through the sky appeared under his feet. It opened up a corner of the world and tore another crack in the blessed land. Retreat! As his voice fell, the people from immortal Linghu Mountain immediately broke away from the battle and entered the crack. At the same time, Zhongqiushui also waved his hand and fled with the people from Imperial Sky Pavilion. Fang Yinglong waved his sleeve and a powerful gang chi spread out. He directly brought Chu Xiu and a group of High Heaven sect disciples into the crack. The next moment, the soaring heaven pagoda dissipated, and the entire blessed land began to shake and crumble as if it was about to shatter. Chapter 12:23. In the grotto heaven that was on the verge of collapse, Mu Baishuang waved his hand and the sword chi that was sealing the crack returned to his hand. His face was pale. Even though he was in existence of the 8th heavenly layer of martial immortal, it was still extremely strenuous for him to seal a crack in a paradise, a crack in a small world, all by himself. Yan Beifeng's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Chu Xiu. No one had a problem with the series of attacks just now, but he had a problem. Even though the others didn't say anything, Yan Beifeng still felt embarrassed. Who was that person just now? Mu Baishuang suddenly asked. Yan Beifeng's face was dark and he didn't speak. Tao Qianming said, it was Chu Xiu, the Kangwu County chief of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. I heard that he is also a descendant of a prime sovereign. He seems to have a powerful background. Mu Baishuang nodded but didn't say anything. Tao Qianming asked cautiously, are we still chasing? Mu Baishuang shook his head and said, we won't be able to catch up if we let them escape. It's suicide for us to enter the Eastern Territory alone. Let's go, this blessed paradise is about to collapse. He was the one who proposed the plan to kill Fang Yinglong. Now that it had failed, he didn't feel depressed. For Mu Baishuang, everything depended on the person, the timing, and the sword in his hand. As for the last part, it was up to the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens didn't want Fang Yinglong to die. The Eastern Territory really wasn't easy to occupy. Mu Baishuang waved his hand and the other cultivators of the Southern Territory also found an opportunity to leave as soon as possible. When martial immortal level experts fought with their lives on the line, they were capable of destroying several counties in the outside world. However, when placed in the blessed paradise, they managed to tear apart such an enormous blessed paradise. From this, one could imagine exactly how powerful they were. In Sangnan Mansion, the remaining cultivators of High Heaven's sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion were gathered here. This was already the territory of the Eastern Territory. If Mu Baishuang and the others dared to chase after them, the Eastern Territory would be able to send reinforcements as soon as possible. However, Chu Xiu wasn't in a good state either. Blocking that myriad demon kowtow had taken a lot out of him, especially in terms of his vitality. An existence of the 5th level of martial immortal, that sort of power, that sort of might, was simply unstoppable. Even though Lu Jiang he had used the blood demon transformation art to combine the power of their blood and qi, Chu Xiu did not manage to block this move. He only managed to block Yan Beifeng for 3 breaths, which was considered as giving Fang Yinglong a chance to catch his breath. Only then were they able to escape. Fang Yinglong took a deep breath, then bowed to Chu Xiu and said in a deep voice, "Young friend Chu, if it weren't for your help, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape from the southern region's trap. I, Yinglong, owe you a favor, and High Heaven sect also owes you a favor. From now on, the small conflicts between High Heaven sect and you will be written off. As long as Chu needs my High Heaven sect's help, as long as it doesn't harm High Heaven sect's core interests, and as long as I am still the sect master of High Heaven sect, I can agree to anything." Hearing Fang Yinglong's promise, even Lu Sanjin sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect Fang Yinglong to be so generous. Although Chu Xiu's move at the critical moment had indeed turned the tables, this promise was almost equivalent to letting High Heaven sect serve Chu Xiu for free once. This was a huge price to pay. Xianyuan Wushuang even stood up and said loudly, "Sect Master, you can't. Chu Xiu is from the Imperial Sky Pavilion, and he's even more ambitious. If you agree to his conditions, who knows what he'll do in the future. Moreover, in the blessed abode, Chu Xiu didn't care that I was from the East Territory at all. He forced us to retreat and snatched the treasure by himself." Martial Uncle Lin was also present at that time. From this, we can see Chu Xiu's character. As soon as Xianyuan Wushuang said this, even the people of High Heaven sect couldn't stand it anymore. Martial Uncle Lin even pulled Xianyuan Wushuang's arm to stop him. Just now, everyone could see that if it weren't for Chu Xiu's move at the critical moment, Fang Yinglong would really have been in danger of dying. Who was Fang Yinglong? He was the sect master of High Heaven sect, the #1 powerhouse in the East Territory. If Fang Yinglong died, not to mention the East Territory, the sky of High Heaven sect would collapse. But now, you're slandering Chu Xiu with such a trivial matter. This is a bit too much. Sure enough, before the others could say anything, Fang Yinglong shouted sternly, "All of you shut up." Xianyuan Wushuang looked at Fang Yinglong in astonishment. At this time, Fang Yinglong's eyes had become extremely cold. It was a look that he had never seen before. This time, Chu saved my life. According to the morality of Jianghu, a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. I, Fang Yinglong, can't do that. This is already the highest promise I can make. What do you mean by objecting now? Do you want my High Heaven sect to bear the infamy, or do you think that my life is not so valuable? One of the reasons why Fang Yinglong was willing to make such a big promise to Chu Xiu this time was because of himself. Although Fang Yinglong was not a righteous hero, he was not the kind of person who would bite the hand that fed him, nor was he a vicious and ruthless villain. When Yan Beifeng performed the 1,000 Demons kowtow, Fang Yinglong really felt a trace of the aura of death. If it were not for Chu Xiu's help at the critical moment, he would probably have been killed this time. Fang Yinglong's life was very valuable, so Chu Xiu was also worth so much in return. Moreover, this was also related to the reputation of his High Heaven sect. Chu Xiu had saved him in front of so many people. If he did not treat Chu Xiu well and was stingy about it, then how would the East Domain, or even the entire Daoist, view his High Heaven sect in the future? His High Heaven sect could be said to be overbearing, domineering, or even unreasonable, but it could never be said to have no sense of morality or righteousness. All these things added up in exchange for Chu Xiu's promise was very worth it. However, it was a pity that Xianyuan Wushuang was too narrow-minded. Even at this time, he still did not see through it and still cared about those petty grudges. Could such a person really be able to take charge of the High Heaven sect in the future? This was the first time that Fang Yinglong felt so disappointed in Xianyuan Wushuang, a disciple whom his High Heaven sect had once been proud of. At this time, Chu Xiu also said indifferently, "Brother Xianyuan, it's not a good habit to make personal attacks. I, Chu Xiu, naturally have my own rules. In the Blessed Enclave, I told you to get lost and monopolize the treasure, because I have the strength to do so. Obviously, I have the strength to monopolize the treasure, so why should I let it go? If you, Xianyuan Wushuang, had the strength to do so, would you let me have the treasure? As for me saving Sect Master Fang, it was because of righteousness. It was for the benefit of the entire East Domain. The Southern Domain martial artists have the ambition of wolves. They set up a trap to kill Sect Master Fang, and their target is our East Domain. As the county governor of Jianghu Mountain, I am also a member of the East Domain. If the lips are gone, the teeth will be interdependent. At this time, I naturally have to put the overall situation first. What are the grudges between us? If I can save Sect Master Fang's life, I am willing to take out the treasure that I have seized." Chu Xiu's last words were so righteous that the martial artists of the High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion were all extremely moved. The more Fang Yinglong looked at Xianyuan Wushuang, the more disappointed he felt. In his ideal mind, the successor of the High Heaven sect should be like Chu Xiu, who would fight for small matters but stand firm when it came to big matters. He would not let the slightest grudge affect his judgment. Standing behind Chu Xiu, Lu Jianghe could not help but secretly curl his lips, looking a little disgusted. He found that while Chu Xiu's strength was growing, his face was also getting thicker. No, he was not shameless at all. Where did his face come from? Fang Yinglong let out a long sigh and said, "It's great that Chu is so broad-minded and has such foresight. In fact, I was also aware of the attitudes and movements of the major sects in the Southern Domain, but I didn't expect that they would act so soon. After this incident, all the sects in the East Domain must be more vigilant. We can't let those martial artists of the Southern Domain take advantage of us." Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Sect leader Fang, there's still Cold River City. After all, Cold River City is also a part of the East Domain. You have to properly remind Yi Weikong not to lose the big picture for the sake of a small gain at a time like this." Lu Jianghe could not bear to listen to this at this time. In this way, Yi Weikong was actually the most miserable one. He had just made a move to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion, but he was seriously injured by Fang Yinglong and caused such a mess. It was conceivable that he must be very sullen. If Yi Weikong could see the big picture, then he could only continue to hold back his grievances and not take revenge. On the contrary, if Yi Weikong insisted on making a move, then High Heaven sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion might join forces in the end. Anyway, after such a thing happened, the trouble in Cold River City would be solved first. Fang Yinglong nodded and said, "I know. The southern barbaric land is your territory, Chu. It's close to the Southern Domain, so you have to be well protected here. I will take people back to High Heaven sect to make arrangements." After saying that, Fang Yinglong directly left with the people of High Heaven sect. Zhong Qiushui also left with the people of Imperial Sky Pavilion to make arrangements. After everyone left, Chu Xiu immediately began to enter retreat with Lu Jianghe. Both of them used the blood demon transformation technique and consumed a lot of their vitality, so they needed to make up for it in time. After a month, Chu Xiu's vitality was almost replenished. There was also news from outside that the big tomb in the southern barbaric land had been completely shattered. The blessed land inside had been destroyed. With so many martial immortal level experts attacking at the same time, even a fairly large paradise would not be able to withstand their attacks. So, even if Chu Xiu didn't spend any effort to find the core of the blessed land, his goal had been achieved. Of course, it was not that Chu Xiu didn't gain anything. The core of the blessed land itself was a treasure. Chapter 12:24. The crystal that was taken from the heart of the demon god's body was emitting a faint red light. If one were to sense it carefully, one could even feel the vitality of qi and blood in it. After studying it for a while, Chu Xiu simply chose the simplest and most brutal method, which was to tear it apart bit by bit with his gang qi. In the end, what appeared in front of Chu Xiu were 2 drops of blood that exuded shocking power. It was obviously a liquid, but it gave off a strange feeling of being a solid crystal. Although one could not see anything from its appearance, the power within it could be said to be amazing. The blood of the demon god. Chu Xiu could not help but exclaim. If Xianyuan Wushuang knew that there was such a treasure in it, he would probably be even more depressed. The ancient demon god had disappeared for many years, and even the warriors before the Great Tribulation had not seen it. Therefore, what was circulating in the underworld now were only some fragments related to it. However, the blood of the demon god had vitality and truly existed. Without any hesitation, Chu Xiu directly grabbed one of them, threw it into his mouth, and began to refine it. In an instant, it was as if Chu Xiu had swallowed a volcano. The scorching power erupted wildly in his body. In an instant, Chu Xiu's whole body turned blood red, and there were even tiny blood cracks on his body. Chu Xiu did not expect the power of a drop of blood to be so powerful. He almost used all his strength to suppress it, and then began to refine it bit by bit, as if he was spinning silk from a cocoon. Moreover, towards the end of the refinement, illusions appeared in Chu Xiu's mind. A powerful demon god with 3 eyes walked in the great wilderness. At that time, the world was even more majestic than it was now, and there were countless terrifying legendary beasts roaming the land. These illusions were vivid and imprinted in Chu Xiu's mind, and it deepened his understanding of the law embodiment of heaven and earth. The ancient demon god was born from heaven and earth, and the ultimate power mode of the law embodiment of heaven and earth was very similar to it. Therefore, now that Chu Xiu was extremely familiar with the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, he pushed it to a new level. 3 months later, when Chu Xiu came out of his seclusion, a ripple subconsciously appeared around him the moment he stood up. The entire seclusion room shattered with a loud bang. The sound startled everyone in the county governor's manor. Mei Qinglian and the others immediately rushed over, thinking that someone had launched a sneak attack. When he saw this scene, Lu Jiang he said in astonishment, "If you want to go into seclusion, then go into seclusion. Why did you demolish the house? Are you angry because you didn't break through?" Chu Xiu took a deep breath and said, "Don't talk nonsense. It's because I broke through that I can't control my strength." The power of that drop of demon god's blood was indeed astonishing. Not only did it directly increase Chu Xiu's power foundation, but it also attached a trace of demon god's power to his physical body. What was the power of demon gods? Ancient demon gods were nurtured by heaven and earth. Their powerful physical bodies were nourished by the essence energy of heaven and earth, making them extremely powerful. Now, Chu Xiu was the same. Whenever he moved, the essence energy of heaven and earth would involuntarily surge into his body and transform into his physical strength. Although it wasn't a direct body tempering, it made his physical strength soar by a large margin. Therefore, Chu Xiu's current realm was also very strange. He was definitely not a half-step martial immortal, because he hadn't even found the bottleneck of the martial immortal realm, let alone half-step. He couldn't even take half a step forward. However, in terms of combat power, Chu Xiu was able to finish off Patriarch Blood River previously. If Chu Xiu was here, it would be very easy for Chu Xiu to finish off Patriarch Blood River or Mingshuanyu. Where are Elder Wei and City Lord Shang? Chu Xiu suddenly asked. Mei Qinglian said, "Elder Wei has been in seclusion, and City Lord Shang is planting vegetables. Get the 2 of them to come here." After Wei Shiyue and Shang Tianyang arrived, Chu Xiu took out the remaining drop of the demonic god's blood and said, "Elder Wei, City Lord Shang, this is the ancient demonic god's blood that I obtained from the blessed heavenly abode. I just refined a drop, and its effects are extremely powerful. Not only did it raise my strength to the peak of the heaven and earth profound understanding realm, but it also added a trace of the demonic god's power to my body, causing my cultivation to improve greatly. However, there is only one drop of demon god's blood. Which one of you should refine it? For something like the demon god's blood, a single drop was enough for Chu Xiu. A second drop would be a waste. If he refined it again, the amount of power that the demon god's blood could provide Chu Xiu was limited. After all, he was still not a martial immortal. He couldn't contain that much power. Moreover, the demon god's power was only one effect. Even if Chu Xiu refined another 10 drops, the effect would be the same. However, there was only a single drop. Who would Shang Tianliang or Wei Shiya give it to was a problem. However, none of them were the type of people who would scheme in the dark. Thus, Chu Xiu decided to directly take out the demon god's blood and say it openly. Before Shang Tianliang could react, Wei Shiya waved his hand and said, "Give this drop of demon god's blood to City Lord Shang to refine." City Lord Shang has been in the profound understanding realm for a longer period of time than me. His accumulation of power is also deeper. After refining it, he will be able to directly reach the half-step martial immortal realm. Furthermore, City Lord Shang is proficient in close combat. His physical body is very powerful, and it is suitable for the demon god's power. As for me, that thing is of little value. Although Wei Shiya said it was of little value, for cultivators, as long as they could increase their strength, it would be a good thing. It was something worth doing. Merely, at the moment Chu Xiu spoke, Wei Shiya sensed that Chu Xiu was in a difficult position. He viewed Chu Xiu as his successor, the only hope for his lineage. Thus, he did not wish to see Chu Xiu in a difficult position. Thus, he spoke first and gave the demon god's blood to Shang Tianliang. Shang Tianliang opened his mouth. In the end, he sighed. He clasped his hands at Chu Xiu and Wei Shiya and said, "Thank you for your courteous words. I will not bother saying those courteous words. After all, this old man has been putting his life on the line for you all for quite some time now. Now that I've received the demon god's blood, I will put my life on the line even more." Naturally, Shang Tianliang was also able to tell what Wei Shiya was thinking. Wei Shiya giving the demon god's blood to him was a favor that Shang Tianliang could not refuse. As such, he could only accept it. In the past, Shang Tianliang had always been by Chu Xiu's side. To be exact, they could not be considered to be superior and subordinate. However, accepting the demon god's blood was a favor. If he did not put his life on the line, he would not be able to return the favor. When Lu Jianghu saw that, he was unable to help himself from shaking his head. It was not that he disapproved of it. Rather, he felt somewhat moved. Naturally, the Kunlun devil cult of 500 years ago was stronger than the people under Chu Xiu. However, perhaps because Dugu Weiwei was too powerful, the Kunlun devil cult of that time lacked a bit of humanity. Thus, they felt even more reverence for Dugu Weiwei. Wei Shiya could be said to have poured his heart and soul into Chu Xiu. Of course, Chu Xiu returned the favor, and did not disappoint him. After the crowd dispersed, Shang Tianliang entered closed-door training. As for Chu Xiu, he did not continue his closed-door training. His strength had already reached its peak. Thus, it was time for him to search for the opportunity to break through to the martial immortal realm. Thus, Chu Xiu prepared to find Heavenly Soul to discuss the martial immortal realm. However, at that moment, Yuan Kongqing came to his door. Previously, Yuan Kongqing had said that he wanted to trade for the martial path contained in Dugu Weiwei's blood. At that time, Chu Xiu had made an excuse and Yuan Kongqing had said that he would visit in the future. Unexpectedly, Yuan Kongqing had really come. Chu Xiu brought Yuan Kongqing into the Cangnan residence's guest hall and said with some surprise, "Palace head Yuan, you still dare to come to the eastern region? This is a bit beyond my expectations. You should be able to tell that there will definitely be a battle between the eastern region and the southern region. Both sides are very tense. Are you not afraid of any misunderstandings?" Yuan Kongqing casually spread his hands and said, "My heavenly demon palace has no designs on the eastern region. Why should I be afraid of misunderstandings? When we besieged Fang Yinglong, there was such a huge commotion. How could I not see it? I deliberately did not attack." "Oh. Why?" Chu Xiu was a little surprised. Because attacking the eastern region should be a good thing for all the sects in the southern region. And as a demonic sect, Heavenly Demon Palace was definitely not that kind. Yuan Kongqing said indifferently, "Because there is no need to take the risk. When my Heavenly Demon Palace entered the Daoist Ocean, it was the orthodox demonic path. In the southern region, there is a huge demonic cave that was occupied by my Heavenly Demon Palace. Even after 10,000 years, it has not been completely explored. With this level of resources, why would my Heavenly Demon Palace go to the trouble of fighting with the eastern region and conquering those areas that we have no use for? But the World Sword sect and the other sects are different. They need territory, resources, and people. Therefore, they have to act. Of course, only the World Sword sect and the Warring Martial Gods sect have strong desires. Those lunatics from the Blissful Devil Palace always like to research strange things. To them, resources and other things weren't that important. I reckon that the Blissful Devil Palace was more interested in getting their hands on the corpses of the experts left behind in the war. The Great Thousand sect was purely coerced. They are the weakest, and their expertise is not pure martial arts. They can only follow the flow of the strongest sections." After saying this, Yuan Kongqing said in a deep voice, "Chu, no matter how many grievances there are between the eastern region and the southern region, at least my Heavenly Demon Palace is not your enemy. So, can you take out the martial arts in Dugu Weiwei's blood essence for trade?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and nodded, "I have already asked my master. The martial arts can be taken out for trade." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Yuan Kongqing immediately smiled. Since Chu Xiu had agreed, his trip was not in vain. But at this time, Chu Xiu changed the topic, "But my master also said that he does not want to trade the martial arts directly. He wants to trade the blood essence directly." Chapter 1225. Chu Xiu's words made Yuan Kongqing a little confused. Not exchanging cultivation techniques or martial arts, but the blood essence itself. What did this mean? Could it be that they thought he had not extracted all the martial arts from the blood essence? Yuan Kongqing said, "Chu, I'm afraid your revered master has misunderstood. For hundreds of years, our Heavenly Demon Palace has extracted all the martial arts contained in that drop of blood essence. There is absolutely nothing missing. So, we can just exchange the martial arts directly." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Palace Lord Yuan has misunderstood. My lineage does not mean that. It's just that my master has a cultivation technique that requires the blood of experts to be used for research. With so many Daoist Ocean experts, I don't think anyone can compare to the one from 500 years ago, right? Since the martial arts in the blood essence have been extracted, it is useless for Heavenly Demon Palace to keep it. I am willing to take out an extra set of martial arts to exchange. What do you think, Palace Lord Yuan?" Yuan Kongqing only hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. Dugu Weiwei's blood essence contained extremely powerful energy. In theory, the blood essence left behind by such an expert was also a treasure. However, for those who were not strong enough, this thing was both a treasure and a poison, because everyone could refine it. The remnant imprint within the drop of blood essence was simply too strong. The power within the drop of blood essence was simply too strong. There were people who attempted to refine it before. In the end, their bodies exploded and they died. Even if it were a martial immortal, they would suffer from the backlash. Thus, after the cultivation techniques and martial techniques within the drop of blood essence were extracted, these items became useless. At the very least, they were useless to the Heavenly Demon Palace. Yuan Kongqing did not bring Dugu Weiwei's blood essence with him. A month later, he brought back 5 drops of blood essence as fast as he could before starting to trade with Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had a lot of Dugu Weiwei's cultivation techniques and martial arts. He did not get them from Tianhun but from the space crack where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had fought. Chu Xiu did not feel bad about trading these things. For things like cultivation methods and martial arts, even if they were of the same origin, it was impossible to cultivate them to be exactly the same. Even if these things were given to the Sky Devil Palace, the Sky Devil Palace would not be able to produce the next Dugu Weiwei. Furthermore, there was no such thing as the Misty Slash among those techniques. After getting the 5 drops of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, Chu Xiu stared at them for a long while, his thoughts a little complicated. This thing wasn't easy to obtain. After all, in the lower dimensions, existences that could injure Dugu Weiwei could simply be counted on one's fingers. Sword Saint Gu Qingqing had used her life to unleash a powerful sword strike. No one knew how many levels of a martial celestial's power had been able to make Dugu Weiwei shed a drop of blood. In the Daoist battle, the Sky Devil Palace alone had collected 5 drops of blood essence. One could only imagine how fierce that battle had been. Right now, Chu Xiu was not in a rush to refine Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. Tianhun had told Chu Xiu not to go down the same path as Dugu Weiwei, but Chu Xiu would not listen to Tianhun for everything. In the lower dimensions, Chu Xiu had refined a drop of Dugu Weiwei's blood. It had been collected by Lu Jianghu. Since he had already refined 1 drop, refining another 5 drops should have the same result. As such, he was not afraid of anything happening. Most importantly, with Chu Xiu's current strength and foundation, even if he were to enter closed-door training for several years, apart from being able to reach the martial immortal realm, it would not be of much use. If he were to refine Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, he might be pleasantly surprised. In the end, Chu Xiu did not choose to tell Tianhun about this. Instead, he began to refine it. He believed in his own intuition. The 5 drops of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence entered his body. It did not give Chu Xiu great power like when he refined the demon god's blood. There was also a backlash. The 5 drops of blood essence flowed into Chu Xiu's body smoothly and naturally, as if they had originally belonged to Chu Xiu. They gathered the power in Chu Xiu's body and spread it to his limbs and bones. At the same time, illusions appeared in Chu Xiu's mind. He saw the Daoist War 500 years ago. Martial immortals. Martial immortals were everywhere. Experts from the major sects, prime venerables, hidden cultivators, and all the strongest Daoist martial immortals were here. The entire world was distorted and stirred by the powerful power of laws. Dugu Weiwei stood right in the middle of these people. His black robes were dyed red with blood, yet there was no expression on his face. There was no surging battle intent, no rage, no resentment, and no fear. Everything was as calm as ever. Compared to this earth-shattering battlefield, his calm demeanor was extremely inharmonious. On the contrary, in the eyes of the martial immortals of the celestial absolute heaven, even though they were the leaders of great sects, existences that stood at the apex of the celestial absolute heaven, their powerful astral energies were unable to conceal the fear in their eyes, much less the terror in their hearts. Kill. No one knew who shouted this word. Countless people charged toward Dugu Weiwei amidst the distorted laws, stepping on the stellar energy of the world. At this moment, Dugu Weiwei suddenly looked in one direction. With a wave of his hand, he slashed out like a long saber. Ting Chunyu was not in his hand. Perhaps at this moment, Ting Chunyu's weapon spirit had already been defeated in the siege. Although Dugu Weiwei did not have a saber in his hand, everyone could sense its extreme sharpness. Puchi. There was a soft sound, but it was more ear-piercing than all the explosions of stellar energy. In the crowd, a martial immortal of unknown heavens had a bewildered and horrified look on his face. His entire body was spraying blood, and the next moment, his entire body was torn into pieces. Misty Slash. This was the true Misty Slash. As the saber was unleashed, its sharpness disappeared without a trace, hidden in the midst of the illusory. Or rather, what Dugu Weiwei had unleashed was no longer a saber strike, but a law. This saber strike was close to a divine ability. Kill me? Ridiculous. A faint voice drifted through the world. The divine abilities law distorted everything. The illusion in front of Chu Xiu also disappeared like the distorted space. Closing his eyes, Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. After refining the 5 drops of blood essence, his greatest gain was not that his strength had been refined and condensed, but that he had learned the true use of the Misty Slash. In the past, when Chu Xiu had obtained the Misty Slash, Dugu Weiwei had used it to deal with the Iron Emperor Castle, a large faction in the human world. However, Chu Xiu reckoned that it was because the Iron Emperor Castle was too weak. It was so weak that Dugu Weiwei's casual slash was not even able to display a tenth of the Misty Slash's might. However, after seeing this illusion, Chu Xiu felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. He felt that there were 4 Dugu Weiwei. According to the heavenly soul, only the life soul in netherworld heaven was the real Dugu Weiwei, and it had his original consciousness. Thus, after the heavenly soul developed his own consciousness, his personality was different from Dugu Weiwei's. This was very normal. Furthermore, there was no need to talk about Chu Xiu. He did not even have a single bit of memory. However, Chu Xiu felt that the Dugu Weiwei in netherworld heaven was different from the Dugu Weiwei he had seen in the illusion before he used the soul-splitting technique. Chu Xiu could not tell what exactly was different. It might be his temperament, or it might just be a simple feeling. Chu Xiu only thought about it for a while and did not delve into it. Perhaps it was because Dugu Weiwei had separated the heavenly soul and the earth soul, which had caused some changes, or it was because of the effects of his cultivation in netherworld heaven. These were all possibilities. However, after refining the 5 drops of Dugu Weiwei's essence blood, Chu Xiu had a new plan. He could not break through to the martial immortal realm in a short time, but refining Dugu Weiwei's essence blood could condense his power and obviously increase his combat power. He had exchanged the essence blood in Heavenly Devil Palace, but what about the others? In the past, when the many experts of the Absolute Heaven fought against Dugu Weiwei, one of Dugu Weiwei's fleshly bodies were destroyed. Given the knowledge and insight of those experts, they should be able to imagine what kind of energy would be contained within the blood essence of an expert like Dugu Weiwei. There must have been quite a lot of blood essence collected by Dugu Weiwei. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu went to the Imperial Sky Pavilion first to ask Zhong Qiushui if he had collected it. At the moment, the Imperial Sky Pavilion seemed to be in a state of panic. Although the crisis of Cold River City had been resolved, the Imperial Sky Pavilion had to be on guard after learning that the Southern Territory might attack the Eastern Territory. Therefore, when Zhong Qiushui saw Chu Xiu coming, he was taken aback and hurriedly asked, "Is the Southern Territory attacking?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Pavilion Master, calm down. Don't panic. If the Southern Territory really attacked, I would have used a spirit array to inform you immediately. How could I come here to tell you directly?" Zhong Qiushui smiled bitterly and said, "Don't panic. I can't not panic now. Now, I suddenly regret killing Li Wuxiang. The position of Pavilion Master is really not something an ordinary person can do." Chu Xiu pointed up and said, "Even if the sky falls, there will be a tall one to hold it up. The one who should be panicking is High Heaven Sect. If the Southern Territory really attacked, High Heaven Sect should be the most nervous." Zhong Qiushui waved his hand and said, "All right, let's not talk about me. Why are you here?" Regarding the matter of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, Chu Xiu did not hide anything and directly used the excuse of Yuan Kongqing to tell Zhong Qiushui. Zhong Qiushui scratched his head and said, "I seem to have heard of this thing from the old Pavilion Master. He seemed to have collected 2 drops of blood essence." "Oh. What happened after that?" "I threw it away." "Threw it away?" Zhong Qiushui said matter-of-factly, "That thing is useless to us. We can't refine it. The demon qi contained in it is too strong. We don't have the matching means of the demon path, so we can't extract anything from it. In the end, we used a spirit array and other means to forcibly break down that drop of blood, which led to a backlash. The spirit array exploded and the power in that drop of blood was completely consumed. What else can we do but throw it away?" Chapter 1226. Zhong Qiushui's answer made Chu Xiu slightly speechless. He did not expect that the Imperial Sky Pavilion would lose the 2 drops of blood essence. Actually, thinking about it, it was very normal. The reason why the demonic palace was able to extract the demonic path cultivation technique from Dugu Wei's blood essence was because the demonic palace was the orthodox demonic path. They had very deep research in this area, while the other sects did not. Since he did not gain anything from the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Chu Xiu went to the High Heaven sect again. As soon as he entered the gate of the High Heaven sect, he heard Xianyuan Wushuang's cold voice. Chu Xiu, what are you doing here? Looking at Xianyuan Wushuang, Chu Xiu could not help but shake his head and say, Xianyuan Wushuang, is this how your High Heaven sect treats its guests? You don't welcome your guests first and instead drive them out? And why aren't you cultivating every time I see you? No wonder your combat strength is so weak. You only know how to rely on your talent and don't even cultivate hard. How can you improve your cultivation? Hearing Chu Xiu's words, which sounded like he was lecturing a junior, Xianyuan Wushuang was about to explode with anger. In fact, Xianyuan Wushuang cultivated very hard. He was not the kind of fool who only relied on his talent and didn't know how to cultivate hard. However, every time Chu Xiu came to the High Heaven sect, something big must have happened. How could Xianyuan Wushuang cultivate at this time? Strictly speaking, his encounter with Chu Xiu was related to Chu Xiu. Fang Yinglong was very disappointed with Xianyuan Wushuang's performance before, so he deprived Xianyuan Wushuang of all his rights as the first disciple of the High Heaven sect and made him patrol the streets of the High Heaven sect. The purpose was to train Xianyuan Wushuang's temperament. But now it seemed that Xianyuan Wushuang's temperament had not improved at all. Just when Xianyuan Wushuang was about to say something, an old voice suddenly sounded, "Enough. Shut up." Qin Baiyuan appeared behind Xianyuan Wushuang and shouted angrily at him, but when he turned his head, Qin Baiyuan smiled at Chu Xiu and said, "Chu, why did you come to my High Heaven sect? But what are those guys from the southern region doing?" Previously in High Heaven sect, Qin Baiyuan doted on Xianyuan Wushuang the most. Qin Baiyuan did not have a good attitude towards Chu Xiu, who had defeated Xianyuan Wushuang in a row. However, after learning that Chu Xiu saved Fang Yinglong, Qin Baiyuan immediately changed his attitude towards Chu Xiu. Needless to say, Fang Yinglong's value to the entire High Heaven sect was almost akin to a pillar of support. Chu Xiu had saved Fang Yinglong, so he deserved this kind of treatment. Most importantly, after this incident, even Qin Baiyuan, who doted on Xianyuan Wushuang the most, felt that he could not let Xianyuan Wushuang go on like this. He was going to train Xianyuan Wushuang as the next sect master of High Heaven sect. A sect master could be arrogant and stingy, but he could not do whatever he liked on important matters. Therefore, this time, Qin Baiyuan's attitude towards Xianyuan Wushuang became stricter. Of course, he did this for Xianyuan Wushuang's own good. If he did not care about Xianyuan Wushuang, he would really have given up on Xianyuan Wushuang. Under Xianyuan Wushuang's resentful gaze, Qin Baiyuan welcomed Chu Xiu into the palace, and Chu Xiu told Qin Baiyuan about the matter. In the end, Chu Xiu added, "Old sect master, Chu Xiu, am not a person who expects favors from others. No matter how much essence blood that person has, I am willing to trade for it." Qin Baiyuan waved his hand casually and said, "It's not important, so what's the point of trading? My High Heaven sect still has 3 drops of essence blood. In the early years, someone studied this thing and wasted a drop without any results, so we put it aside. You can take the rest." In High Heaven sect, Chu Xiu obtained 3 drops of essence blood very smoothly. For Qin Baiyuan, who had not experienced the war 500 years ago, this thing was indeed not important. By the way, old sect master, do you know who has collected the most essence blood among the major Daoist sects? Qin Baiyuan thought for a while and said, "I'm not sure about this. I only heard about it from my master." The war was too chaotic, so few people really paid attention to this thing. It was mainly the Devil Dao, especially the Blissful Demon Palace, who had collected more of it. The Blissful Demon Palace cultivated evil and strange cultivation methods, and they were also good at studying all kinds of evil secret skills, so they should have collected a lot of essence blood for research. Also, the Western Territories' Brahma religion and Heavenly Luo's treasure temple should have gathered some of their essence blood. The Brahma religion also wants to decipher some kind of secret technique from the essence blood. Their secret art itself is half Buddhist and half demon. As for the Heavenly Luo's treasure temple, many of their masters were killed by that existence 500 years ago, causing them to suffer heavy losses. Just like that annoying monk, the Heavenly Luo's treasure temple was the last to join the war, but as a result, it suffered more casualties than the Eastern Territory. As such, the Heavenly Luo's treasure temple collected a part of the other party's essence blood in order to study a way to restrain the other party's power. Qin Baiyuan now found Chu Xiu to be very pleasing to the eye, so he didn't conceal any of these secrets from Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding, but in his heart, he had already made some calculations. He stood up and cupped his hands. Just as he was about to say goodbye, he suddenly said, "Old sect master, if you want to punish Brother Xianyuan for patrolling the streets because of what happened last time, you don't have to. I don't take what happened last time to heart. Brother Xianyuan was defeated by me once, and then by Brother Lu again. It's normal for a proud person like him to be unable to let it go. If it were me, I might not be able to let it go either. The grudges of youth are nothing. Maybe in the future, when Brother Xianyuan and I step into the martial immortal realm, we will look back and find these things to be interesting topics of conversation. Therefore, old sect master should let Brother Xianyuan cultivate normally. As the first person of the younger generation of High Heaven sect, it's really shameful for him to patrol the streets as a low-level disciple." Seeing that Chu Xiu generously exonerated Xianyuan Wushuang, Qin Baiyuan couldn't help but sigh. They were about the same age, but why was there such a big gap between them? Previously, because of his standpoint, he didn't like Chu Xiu. But now, without this standpoint, he increasingly felt that Chu Xiu was calm and magnanimous. At least, his breadth of mind was unquestionable. "Don't worry, Chu. This is just to temper the boy's temperament." An unfathomable smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face, and he said, "That's good. Old sect master, you don't have to see me off. I'll take my leave now." After that, Chu Xiu pushed the door open and left. Xianyuan Wushuang was waiting not far away. Seeing Chu Xiu come out, he immediately glared at Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu left, Xianyuan Wushuang immediately walked into the room and said loudly, "Old sect master, what did Chu Xiu say to you? He is insidious, cunning, and full of tricks. You can't believe what he says." Hearing this, Qin Baiyuan looked at Xianyuan Wushuang with disappointment. There was a huge gap between them. "You're right. I really can't believe what Chu says. You don't have to patrol the street. Go and guard the city gate." Xianyuan Wushuang was stunned. Changing from patrolling the street to guarding the city gate was equivalent to making him lose face all the time. How could he bear this? "Old sect master, what did that insidious guy Chu Xiu say to you?" "How could you ask me to?" Before Xianyuan Wushuang could finish his words, he was directly interrupted by Qin Baiyuan's stern shout, "I told you to go and guard the city gate. Didn't you hear me?" Qin Baiyuan's furious tone scared Xianyuan Wushuang so much that he did not dare to say a word and immediately retreated obediently. Although sect master Fang Yinglong was the most powerful person in the entire High Heaven sect, Qin Baiyuan would not easily lose his temper. However, once he lost his temper, even Fang Yinglong would not dare to confront him. After plotting against Xianyuan Wushuang, Chu Xiu returned to the Imperial Sky Pavilion and used a secret method to contact Yuan Kongqing of the Heavenly Demon Palace. After Yuan Kongqing left last time, he also gave Chu Xiu an array disc, which could be used to contact the Heavenly Demon Palace in the southern region. After listening to Qin Baiyuan's explanation of the whereabouts of Dugu Weiwei's essence blood, Chu Xiu also made a decision to try his best to collect all the essence blood of Dugu Weiwei scattered outside. This was also a way for him to quickly improve his strength. Most importantly, by collecting the essence blood, he could also see the past imprints and illusions in the essence blood. He might be able to obtain some useful things from them, such as the complete version of the ethereal slash. Although Tianhun also knew this, he could not impart it to Chu Xiu perfectly. Now that Tianhuan's physical body was sealed, he could only communicate with the little power of his spirit. He could not impart this martial Tao, which was almost like a divine skill, to Chu Xiu in the form of images. Using words to describe it would be too weak, and it would not be able to display the charm of this martial way at all. In short, for the current Chu Xiu, refining Dugu Wei's blood essence was akin to cheat-like cultivation speed. Moreover, there were no side effects. At the very least, there were none for now. The essence blood of the heavenly demon palace was in the hands of Chu Xiu, and this time, Chu Xiu had his eyes on the blissful demon palace. According to Qin Baiyuan, the blissful demon palace was fond of researching those strange things. Thus, the amount of essence blood they collected should be the largest. Furthermore, the grudge between Chu Xiu and the blissful demon palace could be settled. In the past, when Chu Xiu was facing martial immortals, he was in quite a difficult situation. In fact, he could only rely on Wuxia to use the rootless sacred fire to protect himself. And now, after refining the demonic god's blood and the 8 drops of Dugu Wei's blood essence, even if Chu Xiu could not be said to be unparalleled among those of the same cultivation, he would not be far from it. Adding on his trump cards, he would, at the very least, possess the confidence to fight against martial immortals. Although in Chu Xiu's opinion, he was actually a very stable person, in the eyes of others, Chu Xiu was definitely the kind of person who would dare to slay a dragon as long as he had a butcher's knife. Now that he had the strength to fight against martial immortals, was it too much to attack a peak faction of the southern region? Chapter 1227. When Chu Xiu called Yuan Kongqing over, he was a little puzzled. He didn't know what deal Chu Xiu had specially called him to the eastern region for. Last time, Yuan Kongqing gave Chu Xiu the communication formation plate of Heavenly Demon Palace out of courtesy. After all, one of them was in the southern region, while the other was in the eastern region. Heavenly Demon Palace didn't have any designs on the eastern region, so there was no conflict between them. If there was an opportunity in the future, they could cooperate. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to contact him so quickly. In a secret room in the Tsangnan mansion, Yuan Kongqing said in surprise, "Chu, what deal do you want to talk to me about? If it involves the dispute between the southern region and the eastern region, please keep your mouth shut." If it was some small deal, Chu Xiu should be able to distinguish the importance of it and wouldn't specially call a martial immortal like Yuan Kongqing. But now, Chu Xiu specially called him over. The weight of the deal must be extraordinary. Other than the recent dispute between the eastern region and the southern region, Yuan Kongqing really couldn't think of anything else. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "It's not a matter between the eastern region and the southern region, but a matter of the demonic Tao. Right now, the Heavenly Demon Palace and the Blissful Demon Palace are the leaders of the demonic Tao in the southern region, but do you want to become the only leader? My deal is very simple. I want to join hands with the Heavenly Demon Palace to destroy the Blissful Demon Palace." Chu Xiu's words caused Yuan Kongqing's expression to change. He had never imagined that Chu Xiu would tell him such a thing. "Chu, are you sure you're not joking?" Yuan Kongqing said with a solemn expression. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I specially called you, a martial immortal, over from the southern region, just to make a joke. I'm not that bored. I'm sure you're aware of the grudge between me and the Blissful Demon Palace, Palace Lord Yuan. A good friend of mine annihilated a branch of the Blissful Demon Palace in the Southern Territory. In the end, the Blissful Demon Palace couldn't find the culprit, so they blamed it on me and wanted to kill me. This was just a personal grudge, and it also involved some interests. Last time when I traded with you, Palace Master Yuan, my master was very satisfied with that person's blood essence. However, he wanted more. As far as I know, among the Daoist people, the one with the most blood essence should be the Bliss Demon Palace. Therefore, I only ask for 2 things. One is to destroy the Bliss Devil Palace, and the other is that person's blood essence." Looking at Chu Xiu's serious expression, Yuan Kongqing knew that Chu Xiu was not joking. The relationship between the Sky Devil Palace and the Bliss Devil Palace wasn't harmonious. Of course, the members of the Bliss Devil Palace wouldn't get along with anyone. Therefore, Yuan Kongqing had no reason to refuse the destruction of the Blissful Demon Palace, making the Sky Demon Palace the leader of the Southern Domain's Devil Dao, and also the leader of the entire Daoist Devil Dao. Moreover, what Chu Xiu wanted did not conflict with their Sky Demon Palace at all. However, after some thought, Yuan Kongqing said, "It won't be easy to destroy the Blissful Demon Palace. Yan Beifeng's methods aren't weak, and I'm no match for him in a real life or death battle. As for my palace master, I won't hide it from you. He made a mistake in his cultivation, so he can't leave the Sky Demon Palace. This is known by the entire Southern Domain, so he can't participate in the war. Moreover, the Blissful Demon Palace doesn't abstain from eating meat or vegetables, so they've recruited many disciples. Although their temperaments and aptitudes are mixed, they've nurtured many experts. In this aspect, they're even stronger than my Sky Demon Palace. Over the years, the Blissful Demon Palace and my Sky Demon Palace have had many conflicts, but there's never been a war. That's because both of us know that we can't do anything to each other." Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "That was in the past. Now that I'm involved, the result will be different." Yuan Kongqing couldn't help but laugh. "You're really confident. How much strength can you bring out? If you say the Imperial Sky Pavilion is going all out, I can somewhat believe it. However, if the Imperial Sky Pavilion is going all out, the various major powers of the Southern Domain will definitely interfere." Chu Xiu extended his hand, and a strand of astral energy spiraled around his hand. However, the extreme sharpness of the astral energy continued to tear apart the surrounding power. Although the astral energy was small, Yuan Kongqing was able to sense what the power it emitted represented. "You become a half-step martial immortal? You have another half-step martial immortal with you?" Yuan Kongqing exclaimed. Yuan Kongqing wasn't present when Chu Xiu blocked Yan Beifeng's 10,000 demon kowtows. However, he had heard about it from others. At that time, Chu Xiu had yet to become a half-step martial immortal. Yet, in such a short period of time, he had made another breakthrough. Even Yuan Kongqing, a martial immortal, was astonished by his speed. 2 half-step martial immortals. When it's time to attack the Blissful Demon Palace's headquarters, we'll take action. As long as the Heavenly Demon Palace makes a decision, I can help them deal with the Blissful Demon Palace. I won't let the Heavenly Demon Palace suffer too many losses." Chu Xiu pointed to his head and said, "Although I prefer to use my fists and knives to solve problems sometimes, when it's time to use my brain, I still need to use my brain." The tricks that Chu Xiu had played in the lower realm were, in fact, useless in the Daoist kingdom. The reason was simple. He was not strong enough. The prerequisite to using one's brain and scheming was to have the strength to do so. Otherwise, one would become the victim of one's own cleverness. And now, Chu Xiu clearly had the confidence to face a martial immortal. Yuan Kongqing pondered for a moment before he stood up and said, "Chu, please wait a little longer. This matter is too serious. I need to return to the Heavenly Demon Palace and consult the Palace Master before making a decision." Southern Region, Heavenly Demon Palace. The Heavenly Demon Palace was located in the remains of a demonic den. It used to be a small world, but for some reason, the small world shattered and fused with the Daoist Kingdom. As a result, the area within 10 miles of the Heavenly Demon Palace was shrouded in pitch-black mountains of grotesque rocks. Not a single blade of grass grew there, and it was difficult for living creatures to survive. However, it emanated an astonishing demonic aura, making it the most suitable place for demonic cultivators. The Heavenly Demon Palace's headquarters was built in the middle of the mountain. All of the palaces were constructed from pitch-black rocks, giving the entire Heavenly Demon Palace a feeling of soaring demonic aura. In the deepest palace, Yuan Kongqing stood. A black-robed old man sat cross-legged before him. His hair and beard were all white, making him look rather old. Even more bizarre was that his legs seemed to have petrified, fusing with the entire Heavenly Demon Palace's main hall. This person was the current palace master of the Heavenly Demon Palace, the Great Desolation Demon Exalt, Wuxia Xianxia, an 8th heaven martial immortal who had once dominated the southern region. Unfortunately, a few decades ago, Wuxia Xianxia wanted to refine an innate demonic spirit born in a demonic den and fuse it with the Heavenly Demon Palace's main hall to protect it. In the end, something went wrong, and his body fused with the main hall instead, making it impossible for him to take a step out of the Heavenly Demon Palace. Unless Wuxia Xianxia gave up his body, he would never be able to take a step out of the Heavenly Demon Palace. However, the cultivation techniques Wuxia Xianxia cultivated in was special, and it was extremely important to the tempering of his body. Abandoning his body was equivalent to abandoning his cultivation at the martial immortal realm. So in all these years, Wuxia Xianxia hadn't taken a single step out of the hall. After Yuan Kongqing told Wuxia Xianxia about his deal with Chu Xiu, Wuxia Xianxia snorted coldly and waved his hand. No. Kongqing, you've grown up. You actually believe the promise made by a brat, and even want to join forces with him to do such a big thing. What a joke. Our heavenly demonic palace has been established in the southern territory for so long, and we have relied on our steadiness in handling matters. That's how we have been able to take every step without making any mistakes. Our legacy has not weakened too much to this day. We absolutely cannot do such a risky thing. Yuan Kongqing thought, steadiness? If you didn't suddenly want to refine some demonic spirit, you wouldn't have become like this. Although Yuan Kongqing thought that, he had no choice but to explain, Sect Master, Chu Xiu isn't an ordinary junior. He's extremely famous in the eastern region, second only to martial immortals. Moreover, he once took on Yan Beifeng's 10,000 demon kowtow with his heaven and earth profound understanding realm. His strength has reached the half-step martial immortal realm. If we can destroy the Bliss Demon Palace, our Heavenly Demon Palace. I said no, so I won't. Wuxia Xianxia interrupted Yuan Kongqing with a firm attitude. Seeing Wuxia Xianxia's reaction, Yuan Kongqing felt helpless. Although Wuxia Xianxia hadn't left the Heavenly Demon Palace for decades, it was still under his control. Even Yuan Kongqing couldn't refute the decision he made, and could only retreat helplessly. However, Yuan Kongqing was still rather meticulous. Although the matter had failed, he still personally made a trip to the southern region and told Chu Xiu about the outcome of the matter. Chu Xiu wasn't dejected. He asked, putting left Palace Master's attitude aside, Palace Master Yuan, you agree to this matter, right? Yuan Kongqing nodded, although I agree, it's useless. Palace Master's words carry enormous weight. If he doesn't agree, apart from my trusted subordinates, I can't mobilize many people in the Heavenly Demon Palace. Chu Xiu asked in a low voice, Palace Master Yuan, what's your relationship with left Palace Master? Yuan Kongqing said, he's my martial uncle. Seeing the strange look in Chu Xiu's eyes, Yuan Kongqing explained, my master died early in an accident, and he had a good relationship with Palace Master when he was alive. There was no internal strife in the sect. Even the Palace Lord has told me that I am the only one who is qualified to take over the position of Palace Lord in the future. Chu Xiu clapped his hands, since that's the case, it's easy. I have a plan, but I wonder if Palace Master Yuan dares to carry it out? What plan? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, it's very simple, we just need to act first and report later. Didn't left Palace Master disagree? Then we'll think of a way to kill Bliss Demon Palace's Ming Xuanyu with lightning speed and bring his head to left Palace Master. He'll naturally agree. Ming Xuanyu's palace is the most important palace of the Bliss Demon Palace. Once we eradicate him, what's done is done. Even if left Palace Master disagrees, both sides will have to fight to the death. Chapter 12:28. Although Chu Xiu's plan was to act first and report later, it was actually to force him to abdicate. By killing a palace master of the blissful demon palace, the two sects would have to go to war even if they didn't want to. Yuan Kongqing was not an indecisive person. In fact, for a martial artist to be able to reach this stage, one would not be able to find many people who were indecisive. Yuan Kongqing's personality was a bit radical, which was why he stopped Yan Beifeng and took the initiative to negotiate with Chu Xiu about Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. Although Chu Xiu's plan was risky, Yuan Kongqing believed that if he really brought Ming Xuanyu's head back to the Heavenly Demon Palace, Sui Qiliang would definitely agree. It's easy to kill Ming Xuanyu, but won't it alert the blissful demon palace in advance? Yuan Kongqing asked. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, Palace Lord Yuan, rest assured. As long as I'm here, I promise to do it cleanly. Sometimes, you don't have to do it yourself to kill someone. Palace Lord Yuan, just wait for my arrangements. With Chu Xiu's current strength, it was very easy for him to kill Ming Xuanyu. The difficult part was how to avoid alerting the blissful demon palace. Therefore, he could do it, but he couldn't be the main person to do it. Chu Xiu had already decided who would do it. Those barbarians would be the best hired thugs. With Chu Xiu's full support, the Black Civ tribe's strength ranked among the top in the entire Dilua mountain range. Moreover, Chu Xiu had also discovered a special characteristic of the barbarians: they only focused on what was in front of them. Very few of them would think about what would happen in the future. This couldn't be said that the barbarians were narrow-minded. It could only be said that this was a habit of theirs, a very bad habit. Therefore, Chu Xiu had the Black Civ tribe do it very simply. They were narrow-minded, so let the Black Civ tribe be the leader and join forces to attack. This kind of thing was not Chu Xiu's original creation. Previously, when Cold River City stirred up trouble in Jianghu County, it also instigated several barbarian tribes to attack together, causing a riot and killing the former county chief of Jianghu County. The branch palace where Ming Xuanyu was located was close to the dense forest of the Southern Territory. Although it wasn't within the Black Civ tribe's territory, those barbarians had definitely heard of the Black Civ tribe's name. The communication between these barbarians was actually very simple. As long as they bet on their ancestors, gods, and the like, it would be very easy for them to trust each other. At this moment, Ming Xuanyu had no idea that he had already been targeted by Chu Xiu. Ming Xuanyu stood in a gloomy hall in the blissful demon palace's branch palace. All sorts of blood were laid out in front of him, and there were also runes flowing around them, imprisoning the primordial spirit power of some warriors, or even their true spirits. The blissful demon palace often researched all sorts of evil things. If one wanted to kill someone, one had to understand that person first. Through all sorts of experiments, they might obtain some treasures, some power, and of course, it was even more likely that they would create some monsters. After Ming Xuanyu mixed all sorts of blood and devil qi, he refined a true spirit into an existence that looked like an evil spirit and fused it into his body. Ming Xuanyu couldn't help but curl his lips. These barbarians had very strong bodies, but their mental strength was too weak. Only the barbarian high priests could extract their true spirits. Moreover, it was not easy to capture this group of people now. Ming Xuanyu wanted to push his branch palace further into the southern barbarians. However, at this moment, a series of battle cries came from outside the branch palace. Ming Xuanyu's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly ran out and shouted, "What happened?" A disciple of the blissful demon palace shouted in panic, "It's those barbarians." A few, maybe more than a dozen barbarian tribes joined forces to attack the branch palace. The formation has already been destroyed by them in an instant. Ming Xuanyu's face revealed a look of disbelief when he heard this. He had been guarding the southern barbarians for so many years, so he naturally understood the character of the barbarians very well. Therefore, Ming Xuanyu was confident that he shouldn't have crossed their bottom line. How could this group of stubborn barbarians join forces to attack him? Go and report to the headquarters first. I'll go out and take a look. Although the situation was urgent, Ming Xuanyu didn't panic too much. Although there were many barbarians, he was in existence at the peak of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm. The combat strength of those barbarians was generally on the low side. Ordinary barbarian patriarchs were no match for him. However, when Ming Xuanyu went out to take a look, he could no longer remain calm. The surroundings were filled with barbarian warriors, and they let out indistinguishable roars as they rushed towards the disciples of the blissful demon palace. The number of barbarian warriors was more than 10 times that of the disciples of the blissful demon palace. With such a large number of people, the disciples of the blissful demon palace were drowned in an instant. Retreat! Retreat quickly! Ming Xuanyu shouted. Just as he was about to go and rescue them, an extreme sense of danger suddenly rose in his heart. Ming Xuanyu's intuition told him to immediately stop and unleash all the power in his body. In an instant, his entire body was covered in a ghostly aura. Ferocious hungry ghosts wrapped around him from head to toe, and his domain also spread around him. However, at this moment, a sharp light suddenly descended, and the evil ghosts around Ming Xuanyu were all torn apart. Ming Xuanyu shouted and slashed backward with his pitch-black devil saber. With a loud explosion, his entire body was sent flying. At the same time, he saw the appearance of the person behind him. Chu Xiu. Ming Xuanyu's eyes were filled with disbelief. He never expected that the person who attacked him at this time would actually be Chu Xiu. The relationship between the southern region and the eastern region was currently sensitive. Moreover, the blissful demon palace was also stronger than the imperial sky pavilion behind Chu Xiu. Just where did he get the confidence to attack him? In that instant, a great deal of benefits flashed through Ming Xuanyu's mind. However, before he could figure it out, Chu Xiu had already formed a Buddhist seal and the Vairocana seal smashed down. A powerful aura instantly enveloped Ming Xuanyu. Boundless Buddhist light extinguished the demonic aura and completely melted away the evil ghosts. That attack alone caused Ming Xuanyu's eyes to fill with astonishment. Half-step martial immortal. Only half-step martial immortal level existences would be able to render him incapable of withstanding the attacks of the current him. However, it had only been a few months since the blessed paradise opened. Although Chu Xiu was very powerful back then, he was definitely not a half-step martial immortal. Ming Xuanyu was sent flying by the Vairocana seal. The powerful Buddhist light seeped into his body and destroyed the demonic aura in his body, causing him to groan in pain. Chu Xiu. You dare attack me? Aren't you afraid? Just as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu expressionlessly sent another seal crashing down. Buddhist light enveloped him. It was still the Vairocana seal. Buddhist martial arts could be said to be the best counter to the blissful demon palace's cultivation method, which was a completely evil and strange path. Ming Xuanyu knew from the look in Chu Xiu's eyes that he was determined to kill him. Ming Xuanyu was quite decisive. At a time like this, he could no longer care about the remaining disciples of the blissful demon palace. The ghosts around him that he had refined exploded one after another, turning into a black mist that fused into his body. In an instant, almost 90% of the ghosts around him were destroyed. Ming Xuanyu's speed also exploded to its limit. He turned into a black mist and appeared several hundred feet away in the blink of an eye. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and slashed down with his saber. There was no saber light, no saber light. But everyone could sense the sharpness that seemed to tear the world apart. The saber intent was traceless, ethereal and formless. Ming Xuanyu thought that he would be able to escape. He had just breathed a sigh of relief, but before he could completely exhale, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his neck. When he looked down, what he saw was a headless corpse. With a soft thud, the head fell to the ground, but the corpse was still standing. Chu Xiu slowly walked forward and picked up Ming Xuanyu's head. A world-destroying flame bloomed in his hand, and he skillfully burned Ming Xuanyu's corpse to ashes. He nodded at Green Jade, who was in the crowd of barbarians, and then disappeared into the darkness. At this time, Shang Tianliang and Yuan Kongqing walked over at the same time. In this period of time, Shang Tianliang had already refined the drop of demon god's blood and successfully stepped into the half-step martial immortal realm. Therefore, he was also called over by Chu Xiu to be his fighter. Perhaps it was because he had received help from someone else that Shang Tianliang would usually help in such situations, but he would certainly complain a little. But this time, he did not say a word. At this moment, Yuan Kongqing was looking at Chu Xiu with shock in his eyes. Extreme shock. This kind of fighting strength, this kind of realm, the speed of Chu Xiu's progress was simply indescribable to Yuan Kongqing. Palace Lord Yuan, the martial artists of the branch palace have already spread the news of the barbarian uprising to the blissful demon palace? Yuan Kongqing was taken aback for a moment, then said, I watched them spread the news and then killed them. Chu Xiu nodded, holding the head in Yuan Kongqing's hand, and said, in that case, there is no problem. We can go see the left palace lord. Yuan Kongqing nodded, then brought Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang to the heavenly demon palace. He did not expect Chu Xiu to handle the matter so quickly, using the barbarians to easily destroy the branch palace of the blissful demon palace. Actually, it was not that no one had thought of such a method before. It was just that within the Daoist race, there were not many people like Chu Xiu who could command the barbarians to fight for him. This was the first time Chu Xiu had come to the southern region. Along the way, Chu Xiu had carefully observed the southern region. It was no wonder the sword sect and the other great sects of the southern region were interested in the eastern region. The feng shui of the southern region was indeed inferior to that of the eastern region. Even the natural energy of the southern region was filled with a violent aura, not as peaceful as that of the eastern region. After arriving at the heavenly demon palace, Yuan Kongqing did not waste any time. He led Chu Xiu and the others to knock on the door of Zhuoqiuliang's palace. Zhuoqiuliang looked at Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang in confusion, and asked, who are they? Are they the newly recruited foreign officials of the heavenly demon palace? Yuan Kongqing shook his head and said, Palace Lord, they are the people I told you about last time, Chu Xiu of the Royal Sky Pavilion, and his subordinate, the half-step martial immortal Shang Tianliang. Zhuoqiuliang's expression immediately changed, and he shouted, what did I tell you last time? I don't. Zhuoqiuliang stopped before he could finish speaking, because Yuan Kongqing had taken out Ming Xuanyu's head from the secret space box and placed it in front of Zhuoqiuliang. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.